Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
Jin hesitated for a moment, then quickly followed, asking somewhat strangely, "Hey, I'm a Saiyan, aren't you scared at all? There are good Saiyans and bad Saiyans. I can tell from your eyes that you're not a bad one." Pibara turned around and smiled, his bean-like eyes blinking a few times. "Really? You've seen a good Saiyan?" Jin smiled with satisfaction. "I haven't seen it, but my ancestors have," Pibara laughed. "So, a long time ago, a Saiyan came to Yadret?" Jin quickly understood the meaning behind Pibara's words. "Yes, that's exactly right," Pibala nodded. "My ancestor once told me that if a good Saiyan were to descend upon our planet, I should take her to that place." "That place, where is it?" Jin asked, puzzled. "We're almost there, on that mountain over there." Pibara pointed to a misty mountain shrouded in the distant forest, then sighed softly. "But then again, you were truly lucky to survive the destruction of planet Vegeta." So, planet Vegeta was destroyed after all. Jin's expression tightened and a hint of sadness appeared in her eyes. Moreover, the thought of Bardok's death filled Jin with grief, and 2 streams of tears flowed down her face. "We Yadrets possess many special abilities, including the ability to sense events happening far away," Pibara explained. Jin didn't speak and followed behind him. After traveling some more distance, Jin saw a towering mountain that seemed to reach into the clouds. "You can fly, right?" Pibala turned to look at Jin. Jin nodded. "Up there." Pibala pointed to the mountainside and took to the air. Jin followed and flew up. After flying upwards for about 100 meters, a large platform appeared halfway up the mountain, about the size of a football field. Inside the platform is a natural cave. "Wait a moment." After saying this, Pibala walked straight into the cave. Jin stared at the cave in front of her with a puzzled look, completely unable to understand what Pibala was trying to do. About 5 minutes have passed. Pibala emerged from the cave holding something that resembled a parchment scroll. "Take a look at this. Do you recognize the writing on it?" Pibara handed the parchment to Jin. Jin paused slightly, took the parchment, quickly glanced at it, then looked up at Pibala and nodded, saying, "This is our Saiyan script. Take a look at the contents above, it looks like a letter," Pibara said with a smile. Jin looked at the text above with some suspicion. However, after reading the contents of the text, Jin's pretty face was filled with shock, followed by a hint of surprise. This is a letter from Bardos." Jin was even more puzzled, carefully examining the parchment scroll, and pondered, "Why does this parchment scroll seem to have weathered the ravages of time?" "Yes, this parchment is 1,000 years old." Pibala nodded. "But the writing on it also seems to bear the marks of time." Jin looked at the writing again, feeling even more puzzled. "That's right, exactly." Pibala nodded slightly, his hands behind his back. Jin carefully read the text, and when she understood its meaning, her bright eyes widened in shock. "What does this mean?" Jin asked, her face full of questions. "What did they say?" Pibala asked with a smile. "Bardos said he accidentally traveled 1,000 years ago and told me to wait for him." Jin gave a bitter smile. "You're not joking, are you? How did he get to 1,000 years ago? It doesn't explain in detail." "I don't know either, maybe it's just a coincidence," Pibala mused. "He told you to wait for him, so just wait patiently. Sometimes waiting is a form of spiritual practice." "Bardos said he would return to reunite with me when planet Vegeta was destroyed," Jin said, somewhat puzzled. "Now planet Vegeta is destroyed, where is Bardos?" As she spoke, Jin looked around. Besides the towering mountain and the alien before her, where else could she find anyone, not to mention Bardos? Perhaps something came up and delayed him, Pibala guessed. Jin considered it seriously for a moment, carefully put the parchment away, and said with a slight pursing of her lips, "Then I'll wait for him here, maybe he'll come. Let me take you to see our Grand Elder first." Pibala smiled amicably. "Elder?" Jaini was taken aback. "It's equivalent to the King of you Saiyans," Pibara explained simply. "Okay, thank you for your trouble," Haim said politely. The next moment Pibala took off and left the mountainous area, flying rapidly towards the city. Jin followed closely behind, looking around. But I must say, the sky on this planet is so beautiful. Jin looked up at the golden sky, momentarily mesmerized, and couldn't help but mutter, if only Bardock could look at this golden sky with me. Pibara didn't speak but glanced back at Jin. If Belsi and Kakarot were here too, our family would be reunited. Jin sighed softly, then suddenly remembered something and asked, by the way, Pibara, have you ever seen a very beautiful female Saiyan? Are you talking about yourself? Pibala was taken aback. Jin. It wasn't me, there was a female Saiyan who was even prettier than me. Maybe she brought me to this planet, Jin guessed. Never seen you before. Pibala shook his head. When I found you, you were all alone. Aren't you even a little curious? Jin asked, what are you curious about? Pibara smiled and asked Jin, I don't even have a spaceship with me. Aren't you curious how I got to this planet? Jin asked. Perhaps God brought you to this planet. Pibala was unsurprised. God. Jin was taken aback, scratched her head, and replied thoughtfully, what you're saying seems to make sense. That's the only explanation. You are very lucky. You must have done a lot of good deeds and are protected by God, Pibara said with a smile. I haven't done anything good. I'm just a logistics worker on planet Vegeta. My husband Bardock has fought many wars and must have killed a lot of innocent people. If we really die, I think I should go to hell to atone for my husband's sins. Jin sighed softly, her expression somewhat sorrowful. Ibera gave Jin one last deep look but didn't say anything more. The two soon arrived at the city center and stopped in front of a tall and imposing house. There aren't many people on your planet. Jin looked down and around, finding only a few scattered people in the vast city. Yes, like you Saiyans, the Yadrat are a minority. Pibala nodded in response, then pointed to the doorway of the room. This is the High Elder's residence. Then Pibala went up and knocked on the door. Crunch! The door opened and Jin followed Pibara into the room. As soon as she entered, Jin saw a tall figure standing in front of her. Jin looked closely and found that the person in front of her looked very similar to Pibara, as if he were a larger version of Pibara. Hello, Saiyan, the elder said, his voice authoritative yet courteous. Hello, Jin replied quickly. I am the Grand Elder of this planet, the Grand Elder said in a kind tone. I am Jin, Jin replied. From the first moment I saw you, I had a strange feeling. The elder murmured, a strange feeling? Jin was taken aback. You are a remarkable woman, the elder exclaimed. Thank you for the compliment, although I also think I'm very pretty. Jin said shyly, blushing, Grand Elder, I'm not praising your appearance. What I mean is that your husband or children are likely to be extraordinary individuals. The elder thoughtfully stroked his chin. Huh, really? What about me? Jin was slightly taken aback. You seem rather mediocre, the Grand Elder said calmly. Jin. So after all that you were praising my husband and children? Elder, Jin intends to stay and wait for her husband, Mr. Bardock, Pibara said respectfully to the elder. Of course, no problem. The Grand Elder didn't object and added, this planet is big enough you can stay as long as you want. Perhaps many years later you'll meet the person you're waiting for here, but he might not be Bardock. Huh, who else could it be but Bardock? Jin was a little confused. I'm not entirely sure either, this is just my prediction, the Grand Elder said with a slight smile. Although I don't understand what you're talking about, I believe you, so I'll stay here. Jin nodded seriously and agreed. Universe 10, Kaioshin Realm, Lord Supreme Kai, when will the other candidate arrive? Zamasu asked respectfully. It should be soon. Jivas took a sip of tea and looked up at the sky. Just then, two streaks of light of different colors flashed in the sky. They're here. Guaz stood up and stood at attention. Zamasu was also looking far into the sky. High in the sky, a streak of light as bright as a star and a streak of purple-red light formed two parallel lines and fell rapidly toward the ground. Smack! Cruz, along with Bell and Rumsey, landed on the land of the Supreme Kai. Lord Supreme Kai, it's been a long time. Crystal immediately bowed to Guas. Lady Kreese, you're too kind. Jivas quickly returned the greeting, turning his gaze to Belsay as he spoke. Gawaz could easily guess that the person was probably the Supreme Kai candidate brought over by Kaku. Greetings, Lord Rumsey. Jivas bowed to Rumsey again. Rumsey merely glanced at him expressionlessly, snorted coldly, and remained silent, seemingly not particularly fond of Guaz. Let me introduce you to the Supreme Kai. This is Belsai, the Supreme Kai I've chosen as his successor, Kas introduced, then turned to Belsai. Belsai, this is Supreme Kai Goasu. Greetings, Lord Jivas. Bersai stepped forward and bowed. He doesn't look very old. Jivas looked Belsai up and down. HMPH, although he's young, this kid has a divine physique from birth, Rumsey scoffed from the side. He's absolutely suitable to be the successor to the Supreme Kai. Ha ha ha, okay. Goasu nodded repeatedly, pointed to Zamasu beside him and introduced him to Kas and Rumsey. This is King Kai Zamasu. He has developed the Northern Universe exceptionally well, which is why I want him to become a Supreme Kai. Then let's stick to the agreement and have them compete. Whoever is more suitable will inherit the position of Supreme Kai. Rumsey snorted and ordered in an unquestionable tone. No problem. Jivas didn't object, then let them have a contest of strength first. Okay. Rumsey nodded in satisfaction. How about a ring match? Jevas asked Rumsey for his opinion. There's no need for that, let them fight here until one of them concedes, Rumsey said, offering his opinion. Well, all right. Guaz nodded with a wry smile, then looked at Belser and Zamasu, explaining simply, I believe you both know what the tests will be about. One is a contest of strength and the other is an assessment of your mental fortitude. First, we'll have the strength test. As Lord Rumsey said, the entire God of Destruction world is the arena. You two will spar in terms of strength, but you are not allowed to harm each other. Yes, Supreme Kai. Zamasu was the first to bow in respect. Bersai didn't try to take advantage of these courtesies. There's no need for that, because this Supreme Kai originally belonged to me. I think Rumsey is even more eager than I am. He wants me to become the Supreme Kai. What exactly does this guy mean? They taught me to destroy things, yet they also made me the Supreme Kai. Do you expect me to work for him? It's very possible. Beller had already been able to guess Rumsey's intentions, but it doesn't matter, I'll become the Supreme Kai first. This is also what Belsai needs. The match has no time limit, it continues until one side concedes, Guaz said to Bersai and Zamaze. Yes, Supreme Kai. Zamasu bowed again. Beryl stood there calmly, a little excited inside. This is my first battle. No, to be precise, it was my first battle in the game. All my punches and kicks are fed back to this special divine body through my actions. Belsai, please. Zamaze smiled, his eyes full of contempt. After all, Zamasu considered himself a supreme god. The other party was just a human being, although possessing a divine body. But to put it bluntly, he is still a human being. Both the Supreme Kai and the Supreme Kai God are divine fruits from the core star, true divine bodies. It is completely different from the mortal body of a human. Please give me your guidance. Beryl bowed. This is basic etiquette before a competition. The proper etiquette should still be observed. Seeing Bertha bow to him, Zamaze's arrogance intensified. The match begins. Jivas waved his hand. Belsai, come here. Zamasu beckoned to Belsai. Then I won't stand on ceremony. Belsai had no time for politeness. With a swift movement, he appeared directly opposite Zamasu. Belly definitely needs to hurry. Because of the angelic power that Keith infused, Belser was able to control his body without any lag. However, it can only last for 2 hours. Having just set off from the God of Destruction's realm to the Supreme Kai's realm while passing through a planet covered in volcanoes, Rumsey insisted on taking a bath. The angels are generally easygoing, so they did not object. Afterwards, Belsai followed them into that volcanic planet. Rumsey enjoyed a relaxing soak in a hot spring located beneath a volcanic crater. Belser didn't soak in it. He has divine power, not his true form. Even if he did soak in it, the sensation would be very, very small. It's worth mentioning, however, that Kiers chose to soak in a different hot spring and even took off her clothes in the hot spring in front of Beryl. Perhaps to Keith, Belle is just a little over 5 years old. Fortunately, the hot spring water wasn't transparent, otherwise Kirsten would have been completely exposed to Belle's. Rumsey soaked in the hot springs for over an hour before setting off. It took a total of 1.5 hours to get there. In other words, Belsai can now only maintain a smooth performance for half an hour. Rumsey is such a jerk. Hopefully, the battle can be over within half an hour. Beleriand threw a quick punch at Zama's. Zamasu gave a disdainful snort and threw a punch at Belly Z. Their fists collided. Sizzle, sizzle. In the moment their fists collided, flames erupted from Bersai's fist. Zamaze was visibly taken aback, glancing at Berset with some disbelief. Berset's lips curled up slightly as he delivered a side kick that struck Zamasu squarely in the body. Zamasu flew backward, his feet scraping the ground and leaving 2 long tracks on the earth. As expected of a fighting nation, their fighting spirit is very high, Rumsey commented. Yes, this is Belsie's first real battle and I didn't expect her to be so outstanding. Kess smiled and nodded. Hee, after all she's someone I trained. Jivas, you're cheating, but this human does look quite powerful. He has excellent aptitude and talent. Whoosh, Beryl pursued them, rushing towards Zamasu's direction. Zamaze forcefully pushed off with his right foot, stopping abruptly and delivered a powerful punch to the charging Bersai. Beryl sidestepped Zamaze's attack, then landed a punch directly in Zamaze's face. With a muffled thud, Zamasu's face was twisted and deformed by the blow from Belsi, and he staggered, nearly falling to the ground. However, Zamaze reacted very quickly, bracing himself with his hands on the ground to avoid falling. Zamaze turned around and glared fiercely at Bersi, his menacing expression fully revealed. But when Zamasu turned around, he was shocked to find that Belsay had disappeared somewhere. Don't look around during the match. Beryl's voice rang out behind Zama's, followed by a hard kick to his butt. Smack. Zama's immediately lunged forward, landing face first in a classic dog-like fall, his mouth full of mud and grass. Zama's flew into a rage, spat out the mud and grass in his mouth, and was about to get up from the ground when he suddenly sensed that something was wrong. Zama's mechanically looked up. Bel-Sarar was already directly above him, looking down at him. Bang! A Berset kicked Zamaze, knocking him to the ground again. Zamasu rolled several times on the ground before leaping into the air, veins bulging on his forehead, his eyes flashing with boundless killing intent. He was truly enraged. Show me what you've got, Zamasu. Berset smiled. Human, you're asking for death, Zamasu roared in fury. Smack. The next moment, a purple hand blade suddenly appeared in Zamasu's right hand and he rushed towards Berserker. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Zamaze stabbed Bersai repeatedly. Belsi dodged left and right after several rounds of fighting. Bang. Beryl dodged the chop to the neck and kicked Zamasu in the face, leaving a shoe print. Zamaz leaned back, nearly falling headfirst to the ground. Belisi charged in. Zamasu waved his hand in the air, his hand blade carrying boundless momentum, swiftly slashing towards Bells. With a flicker, Beryl vanished from his spot and instantly reappeared behind Zamasu. Immediately afterwards, Berset kicked out again, hitting Zamaze directly in the kidneys. Ow! Zamasu let out a scream and collapsed to the ground again. Beryl swooped down from the air and slammed his knee into the back of Zamaze's head. Bang! Zamasu's head was deeply embedded in the earth, leaving a crater in the ground. That kid, he's pretty ruthless. Rumsey smiled smugly, then quickly added, but I like it, it's my style. I didn't expect him to have such a strong combat awareness, Keith commented. Excellent, excellent, Rumsey exclaimed, shaking his elephant trunk in admiration. Jivas remained silent, quietly wiping his sweat from his brow. The people Kirsten hired really went all out, however, Guaz couldn't say much more right now. After all, there's no rule saying you can't use harsh tactics during a match. As long as it doesn't harm the other person's life, it's fine. Zamaz gritted his teeth and got up from the ground, blood already flowing from the corner of his mouth. Beryl looked at him calmly, his face expressionless. Zamasu's gaze turned cold, a murderous intent rising within him. He wiped the corner of his mouth with his hand, then looked at the blood on his hand, his anger and embarrassment growing even stronger. Hey! Zamasu raised his purple hand blade again and lunged at Berserker. Beryl shifted slightly to the side, his small hand reaching forward to grab Zamaz's hand blade, flames burning in his hand. Click! Instantly, Zamasu's purple hand blade was vaporized by the flames, leaving only half of it. Zamasu's eyes widened, his face filled with disbelief. Bang. Bersi jumped and threw an uppercut, hitting Zamaze in the chin. Meanwhile, Belsay spun 360 degrees in the air and landed slowly. The moment he landed, Berset lightly tapped the ground with his left foot and kicked out again, striking Zamaze in the chest as he stumbled backward. Puff. Zamasu coughed up blood and collapsed to the ground. Beryl landed slowly opposite Zamasu, his expression calm, and asked indifferently, "Shall we continue?" I surrender." Zamasu took a deep breath, got up from the ground, and murmured. Berset glanced at Zamasu but said nothing. "Give up?" Rumsey grinned, then turned to Kex and said, "Kex, didn't you say this King Kai was strong?" "Mr. Zamasu is indeed very strong, even compared to many Supreme Kais. He possesses overwhelming power," Crystal replied. "However, judging from the current situation, it can only be said that Belial has become stronger than before through diligent training." "Great, this kid's just my type." Rumsey excitedly shook his elephant trunk. "Supreme Kaio Zamasu is surrendering." Belser turned to Guas and said, "This." "Zamasu, are you sure you want to admit defeat?" Guas nodded with a smile. "Lord Supreme Kai, I surrender." "I haven't finished speaking. Surrender, that's absolutely impossible," Zamasu said, a ruthless glint in his eyes. Immediately afterward, taking advantage of the moment when Belsay turned his head to look at Guaz, Zamasu thrust forward with a purple hand chop, piercing directly through his shoulder. The purple hand blade pierced through Beryl's right shoulder, leaving a small flame in its wake. That be *****D. How could he be so shameless? He actually launched a sneak attack. Rumsey was furious. He rolled up his sleeves and stepped forward, ready to give Zamasu a good beating. "I never said I surrendered, I just meant that surrendering was impossible." "I didn't finish my sentence, he was careless," Zamasu quickly retorted, scoffing repeatedly. "He also said it himself, don't look around during a fight." Lord Rumsey Zamaze is right. He said he would admit defeat, but he didn't finish his sentence, so it doesn't count as admitting defeat. Guaz interjected, raising his hand to stop Rumsey from stepping forward. Zamaze said that to lull his opponent into a false sense of security. "Get out of my way." Rumsey roared, flicking his trunk lightly. With a scream, Jevaz was sent flying, arcing through the air before landing hundreds of meters away. Zamasu's pupils contracted and his expression changed repeatedly. "Who is this elephant? How can it be so powerful?" Rumsey. "Why is it so crispy?" Rumsey glanced in Guaz's direction and panicked. He immediately leaped forward and appeared beside Guaz. "Hey, are you all right? Don't die." Rumsey hurriedly checked on Guaz's injuries with concern. It's okay, I won't die." Jevaz wanted to cry, feeling pain all over his body. "It's good that you're all right. If you died, I would have disappeared with you." Rumsey breathed a sigh of relief, ignored Guaz, and returned to the scene in an instant. Jevaz felt like he wanted to die. "No. You've already come all this way, aren't you going to help me up? I'm an old man and you knocked me flying with one nose. I almost fell apart from the fall." "Hey, you King Kai named Zamasu, stop trying to pull any tricks on me. You think I won't ruin you?" Rumsey rolled up his sleeves and stepped forward, intending to teach Zamasu a lesson. "I did nothing wrong, there's no mercy in a fight, and I didn't kill him, I only seriously injured him. I didn't break any rules." Zamaze screamed hysterically. "You dare talk back to me?" Rumsey was furious and moved closer to Zamaze again. Zamasu's gaze was cold as he warily watched Rumsey approach, the purple hand chop still firmly embedded in Bersai's shoulder. "Lord Rumsey, there's no need to be angry. Have you forgotten what body I am?" Belsey grinned and turned to look at Rumsey. Rumsey paused for a moment, then quickly came to his senses. "Yes, this kid's body was formed from divine power. At that crucial moment I almost forgot about something so important." "Wait a minute, this kid actually called me Lord Rumsey." Smack! Beryl calmly grabbed Zamasu's purple hand blade, squeezed it hard, and flames ignited in his hand. Snap! Zamasu's hand snapped in two with a sharp sound. Belser's true form briefly experienced the tactile sensation brought by the divine power body. "My shoulder hurts a bit, like I've been punched." However, this level of pain was nothing to Bersai. This time, the main reason why Bells chose to fight with the divine body was because he was worried that Zamasu might use some underhanded tricks. As expected, it turned out to be true. If their true forms were to fight there and they were to be hit, they would indeed be injured. Of course, if the real Beryl had gone there, he would have knocked Zamasu down with just a few punches, rendering him completely helpless and incapable of even resorting to dirty tricks. Sizzle, sizzle. The flames on Beryl's shoulder crackled and popped, quickly and completely healing the wound. Even the clothes on Beryl's body were restored to their original state. In fact, the Saiyan costume that Belial wore was also created using divine power. Seeing that Beryl's body recovered so quickly, Zamasu's eyes widened in shock. That was a pretty good move. Belsay chuckled softly, a slight upturn at the corners of his mouth. You can regenerate? Zamasu was stunned, and in fright he stumbled backward. I know a little, Belsay said with a smile, walking towards Zamasu again. Zamaze panicked completely and kept backing away. As Belgrade drew closer, Zamasu's expression grew increasingly grim. I surrender, Zamaze said hastily. Lord Rumsey, did you hear that? Belsay turned and smiled at Rumsey. Did he speak? Rumsey asked thoughtfully, wiggling his elephant trunk as he spoke while winking at Bersai. That might be the sound of the wind. Beryl nodded, walked over and kicked Zamaz in the chest. Puff. Zamaz coughed up blood and collapsed to the ground again, his face turning deathly pale. Beryl calmly stepped forward and raised his right hand. Smack! A fiery red hand blade appeared in Bersai's hand. Me too! Belser grinned, his flaming hand blade aimed at Zamasu's head. Zamaz was terrified, his face turning ashen, and despair filled his eyes as he glanced into the distance out of the corner of his eye. Supreme Kai Guasu was still lying 100 meters away. This is a disaster. You better not do anything rash. I've already surrendered. Zamasu was terrified, waving his hand at Bersai, his lips twitching uncontrollably. Beryl aimed for Zamaz's shoulder and lunged forward, piercing through his scapula and pinning him firmly to the ground. Ah! Zamaz let out a pig-like scream and blood gushed from his mouth. Look, you stabbed my shoulder right through and I didn't even yell, Belsay said, shaking his head and laughing. Zamasu was still wailing in pain. I've always been petty and hold grudges. You stabbed me in the shoulder, so I'm going to retaliate tenfold. Belsay suddenly drew his hand and chopped. Laugh! Bright red blood spurted from Zamaz's shoulder, appearing particularly vibrant under the sunlight. Rumsey. Why do I feel like this kid is talking to me? Immediately afterwards, Belsay delivered another flaming hand chop, piercing Zamasu's left shoulder. Zamaz let out another heart-wrenching scream, his eyes filled with boundless terror and rage. Zamasu stared intently at Beryl, his eyes filled with resentment. If looks could kill, Berserker would have been killed by Zamasu several times over by now. Why are your eyes so fierce? Belsay snorted, slowly twisting his hand to deliver a deeper and larger wound to Zamasu's shoulder. Zamasu's roars became even more ferocious. That kid, he really went all out. Rumsey stepped back to Kreese's side and whispered to her. Yes, after all, he's a Saiyan, a warrior race. Kreese nodded, unsurprised. I have mixed feelings. I feel like I'm nurturing a formidable opponent, Rumsey said in a low voice. Lord Rumsey, you should look on the bright side. Perhaps he's a very good partner, Kess chuckled. Lord Rumsey and Belser worked together very well just now. What you're saying makes sense. After all, I've already saved his family, so the kid has no reason to resent me. Rumsey shook his nose and nodded thoughtfully, but after saying that, Rumsey suddenly came to his senses and slapped his forehead. Wait a minute, I'm the god of destruction, what do I have to be afraid of? Rumsey scoffed. Even if this kid trained for 1,000 years, he still wouldn't be a match for me. Kreese gave a strange smile and remained silent. Hey, Kiers, there's something off about your laugh. Rumsey had a bad feeling. I didn't say anything, Lord Rumsey, Kirsty replied with a smile. HMPH, if that doesn't work, I'll go back and ask the prophecy bird, Rumsey muttered, shaking his elephant trunk. That's one way too, Kirsty nodded. Slap, slap, slap. Beryl slapped Zama's face several more times until he passed out. Then Belsay calmly clapped his hands, turned his head to look at the Supreme Kai Govas in the distance and nodded slightly to Rumsey. Rumsey quickly understood what Belsay meant and swiftly stepped forward to help Guaz up. Ouch! Jivas winced in pain, his lips twitching, gritting his teeth as he said, My old back. I'm such an old man, could you please go a little easier, Lord Rumsey? Stop talking nonsense, King Kai Zamasu has already passed out. Rumsey carried Jevas back to the vicinity of Belsay and Zamasu. Guaz looked at Zamaz, who was covered in blood, and for a moment didn't know what to say. Guaz had heard Zamaz's pig-like screams from a great distance. But who can be blamed for this? Jevas shook his head and announced, Belsi wins the first test of strength for the trainee Supreme Kai. That's more like it. Rumsey smiled smugly and stepped forward to pat Bersai on the shoulder. Wait a minute, Belsi disagreed. Jivas was taken aback. He hasn't admitted defeat yet, he has to admit defeat himself, that's what the rules of the match said. Beryl smiled, no need. He's already passed out, Jivas replied. What does Lord Rumsey think? Belsi looked at Rumsey. I think so too, this kind of thing needs that guy Zama's admit defeat himself, otherwise it's not a fair victory. Rumsey said with a grin, wiggling his trunk. What if that kid wakes up and says he won't admit defeat? It wouldn't be appropriate for you to make decisions on his own, would it? Well, alright then, wake him up and see what Zama's means. Guaz thought Rumsey made sense, it wasn't that complicated anyway, just wake Zama's up and ask him. Slap, slap! Berset stepped forward again and slapped Zama's twice across the face. After those 2 slaps, Zama's became even more dizzy and didn't wake up. Jivas was speechless. Are you afraid he won't faint completely enough? Hey, wake up, Belsi said, slapping him several more times. Zama's face was swollen from being slapped. Immediately afterwards, Zamasu seemed to regain some consciousness from the slap, slowly opening his eyes and glancing at Belsi with some fear. Smack! Berset kicked Zamaze in the face again. Zamasu, who had just woken up, tilted his head to the side again and fainted. Even Kvass couldn't bear to look at it. It's hard to wake up, Beryl sighed. Try it with water, Rumsey suggested. That's a good idea. Beryl nodded, waved his hand towards a lake dozens of miles away and shouted, Water, come! Whoosh! A jet of water shot rapidly from the distant lake and slammed directly into Zamasu's face. Ow. Zama's immediately snapped out of his unconsciousness, shook his head and struggled to his feet, trembling like a frightened little rabbit. Zama's, are you giving up? Jevas hurriedly stepped forward to ask, fearing that he would continue to be beaten. For Jevas, Zamasu was his subordinate and also the Kai who ruled the northern universe. Being beaten like this by a human felt like a blow to his own face. I surrender, Zamaze replied immediately. Smack! Berset kicked Zamaze, knocking him to the ground. Kvass was truly speechless. He's already admitted defeat, why are you still fighting? Nothing more to say, huh? Belser asked slowly, his foot planted on Zamasu's head. Want to add later, it's impossible for me to admit defeat. I won't say anymore. Zamasu quickly said, you better behave yourself and don't try anything funny in front of me, Rumsey snorted, glaring at Zamaz and threatening him. Zamasu lowered his head. Announce the results of the match quickly, Rumsey instructed Guaz. In the first match of the trainee Supreme Kai, a test of strength, Belse won. Guaz repeated what he had just said. Very good, let's start the second match now. Rumsey grinned, his elephant trunk swaying back and forth, and gave Belse a thumbs up. Bersai nodded to Rumsey without saying anything more. I hope Lady Kess will treat Zamasu. Jevas stepped forward, supporting his aching back, and said respectfully to Kess, let me heal Lord Jevas first. Kess looked at Jevas and unleashed a burst of angelic power through the scepter in her hand. Angelic power quickly enveloped Guaz's body. In just a moment, Guaz's injuries were completely healed and he straightened his back. Thank you, Jivas said quickly. Without saying much, Keith stepped forward to treat Zamasu. Zamaz's injuries healed immediately, but he glanced at Berset with some apprehension before quickly averting his gaze, avoiding eye contact. Zamasu, don't be discouraged, Gowasu comforted him. To be an outstanding apprentice Supreme Kai, one must not only possess immense strength but also a mental state that is beyond the reach of humans. Guaz was clearly referring to Zamaz. The meaning couldn't be clearer. Gowasu was advising Zamasu that although he had lost the contest of strength, if he could win the contest of mindset, he still had a chance to become a disciple of the Supreme Kai. Yes, Supreme Kai. Zamasu immediately bowed and took a deep breath, trying to calm himself down. I will never lose to a human, so now we'll begin the second match, a battle of wits, Jevas said with a smile, raising his right hand. Smack. A crystal ball immediately appeared in Guaz's hand and he placed it on the tea table. Blah blah blah, Jevas held his hands out to the crystal ball, muttering incantations. Whoosh! In an instant, an image appeared in the crystal ball. The scene depicts a lush green forest with towering cliffs rising above it. The sky appeared pale purple with a slightly grayish hue. Zama's, Bersai, you two come over here, Guaz called to the two men. Berset and Zamaze stepped forward together, walking side by side. Bang! However, just as Zamasu and Bilsa were walking side by side, Bilsa suddenly delivered a side kick, sending Zamasu flying. Zamaz rolled several times on the ground, and when he landed, he spat out a mouthful of blood, his eyes filled with terror and confusion. Why did you hit me? What level are you, walking alongside me? Belsay said irritably. Ha ha ha, that's hilarious, you said it perfectly, I'm going to say that to that guy Sidara next time. Rumsey's eyes lit up and he excitedly shook his elephant trunk. Bercy did not respond. Jevas, however, was exasperated, his expression gradually turning serious as he looked at Bell Race. Bell Race, this race is a contest of mentality, not strength. I hope you won't fight Zamasu again. No problem, no problem. Beryl nodded seriously, smiling. To be fair, Zamasu will speak first this time. Guaz's expression softened slightly and he waved to Zamaz. Zamasu got up from the ground, wiped the blood from his mouth and walked forward with a cold face to look at the scene in the crystal ball. Zamaz, Belsi, the planet we are seeing now is called Barbary, Guaz introduced to the two. As soon as he finished speaking, the image in the crystal ball flashed and two Barbary aliens appeared. These two people had bird heads and human bodies, each holding a wooden stake, and they were taking turns hitting each other with it. It's very much like a turn-based game. After several rounds of fighting, one of the birdmen let out a wail, spitting out blue blood and collapsed to the ground, convulsing uncontrollably. That's too barbaric, Zamasu said indignantly as if he were thinking of himself. Rumsey glanced at it silently without offering any opinion. Beryl looked over calmly without saying a word. Humans only recently emerged on this planet and they're certainly quite ferocious, Guaz pondered. Zamaz, Belsi, both of you, what do you think we should do? As agreed, Zamaz, you go first. Yes, Supreme Kai. Zamasu quickly replied, then voiced his true thoughts. I think we should do a thorough cleaning as soon as possible. A thorough cleaning? Guaz was clearly taken aback, turning his head to give Zamaz a strange look. Simply put, it means to wipe them out, to completely eliminate them. Zamaze replied. Zamaz, what did I tell you before? Jevas frowned, his voice sharp. What you're talking about is the work of the god of destruction. Don't be ridiculous, Rumsey scoffed from the side, saying calmly, the god of destruction wouldn't destroy a newly developed planet like this. Jivas's face stiffened and he was momentarily speechless. God of destruction? Zamasu was slightly taken aback. Oh right, I forgot to introduce him to you. This Lord Rumsey is the god of destruction in our universe and also the most powerful god in our universe. Jevas gave a brief introduction. Zamaz stared wide-eyed at Rumsey once more. This guy is a god of destruction. I've heard of him, but I've never met him. So what should we do then, Supreme Kai? Zamasu glanced cautiously at Rumsey, then added, these barbaric humans certainly won't become obedient just because we try to reason with them. So, Mr. Zamaze thinks that we should wipe them all out, is that what you mean? Kirsten suddenly asked. Yes, that's exactly what I mean. There's no need to keep such barbaric humans around, Zamaz nodded in reply. Upon hearing Zamaz's words, Guaz's face showed disappointment and he gently shook his head. He then asked Bersai, who was standing nearby, Bersai, what about you? What do you think? Protect them, quietly protect them. If 100 years isn't enough, then 1,000 years. If 1,000 years isn't enough, then 10,000 years, Beryl said calmly. I believe that one day they will develop their own civilization, and when that time truly comes, the war will gradually cease. A hint of shock flashed in Guaston's eyes and he stared intently at Bercy. To Guaz's surprise, this ruthless human could utter such righteous words. And what he said was almost exactly what I wanted to say. Guaz immediately glanced at Bersai and suddenly felt that Zamaz next to him wasn't so appealing anymore. HMPH, I can't imagine what kind of civilization they could have developed. Zamasu said, immediately putting some distance between himself and Belsay, afraid of getting beaten up. However, what needs to be said still needs to be said. After all, this is related to the assessment of the trainee supreme god. Beryl ignored Zamasu and showed no intention of going up to beat him up for the time being. There needs to be a rhythm to hitting someone. Hitting them after a while is more effective. I am King Kai and I have visited countless planets. Zamasu snorted, continuing the previous topic. I can see that humans like these will never develop civilization. The end result will be that their wars escalate, ultimately destroying the entire planet. Guaz let out a helpless sigh, shaking his head repeatedly, his disappointment in Zama's growing even stronger. Isn't that right? Zamaze argued forcefully. Belsi, tell me your opinion again. Jivas looked at Belsi again, his tone gentle. I still stand by what I said, quietly protect them, Belsi said thoughtfully. The birth of a planet is no easy feat, and humanity, even more so, will likely not develop advanced intelligence for countless years after the planet's formation. Let us silently protect them and they will eventually give rise to their own civilization. Yes, Belsi is right, that's exactly what I was thinking. Guaz nodded in satisfaction and announced, I'm sorry Zamas, you've lost the test of mental fortitude. Zamasu's expression froze, his face shifting repeatedly before he said with some resentment, I'm not reconciled. Why do you say I lost, Supreme Kai? Besides, no one can predict the future. What if I'm right? Zamas, do you want a beating? Is it so hard to admit defeat? Rumsey started snorting again. Even if you beat me to death, I still won't give up. Zamas's stubborn temper suddenly flared up and he argued through gritted teeth. All right, then I'll destroy you now so you'll have no more complaints. Rumsey stretched out his hand, aiming it at Zamasu's body from a distance. Wait a minute, Lord Rumsey. Jivas quickly urged, sighing as he continued, since Zamas has said so, let's go to the future and see for ourselves so he'll be convinced. Why bother, just kill it already. Rumsey rolled his eyes and snapped irritably. Jivas chuckled and with a slight lift of his hand an exquisite box immediately appeared in his palm. The box was opened and a ring lay in the center. This is, Zamasu was stunned. This is the time-space ring that allows you to travel freely through time, Jevas explained. Next, I'll take you two to the future so you can see for yourselves whether they are worth protecting. Understood, Zamas nodded. Beryl didn't respond, taking this opportunity to observe how the ring was used. This thing is mine now, and as Beryl just saw, there was only one ring in the box. In other words, multiple timelines have not yet been created. Only this one spacetime exists. Lord Rumsey, Lady Cass, would you like to come along and take a look? Jivas asked politely again. No interest, go and come back quickly. Rumsey snorted and waved at Jivas. Okay. Jivas nodded, then said to Bersai and Zamas, put your hands on my shoulders and I'll take you on a time travel journey. Just as Bells was about to step forward, Keith suddenly appeared beside him in a flash. Belsi was slightly taken aback when she saw Keith suddenly appear. Go for it, Bells. Keith patted Bells on the shoulder gently and winked at him. Belly suddenly realized. At the same time, Belsi sensed that another layer of angelic power had been attached to this divine body. Bercy almost slapped his thigh in exasperation. I'm going to time travel in a little while. If this happened 1,000 years later, wouldn't we be stuck immediately? You might lose contact with your real body in an instant. Kears is so thoughtful. Okay, Beryl nodded. Rumsey gave Kreese a deep look and focused his gaze on her hands. Although Keith did it quite discreetly, Rumsey still managed to catch a glimpse of what happened. Of course, Rumsey didn't say it outright. As for Kvass, he was completely unaware of it. As a Supreme Kai, it's very difficult for an angel to notice when they do something in front of him. Guaz couldn't detect it and Zamas couldn't see anything at all. Then, Berset and Zamas put their hands on Guaz's shoulders. You all need to hold on tight. If you accidentally get lost during time travel, it will be a very troublesome matter, Jivas solemnly warned. Yes, Lord Guas is right, Keith added to Belser. Even for me, finding you across so many timelines is a very complicated matter. Understood. Berset quickly stepped forward and grabbed Jivas's arm. Zamas's face also changed color. He was startled and immediately grabbed Guaz's other arm tightly. All right, before we travel through time, let me have a cup of tea first. Kvass laughed heartily. Zamas immediately fell backward to the ground. Kears was also quietly wiping away sweat. Rumsey's face darkened and he stepped forward arm in arm with Rumsey. Haha, just kidding, Lord Rumsey, don't be angry. Jeevas waved his hand. What I meant was, before time travel. I need to go to Barbary in this era first. Kai. As he spoke, Jeevas muttered incantations. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, Guaz, along with Belsi and Zamas, vanished without a trace. Watching the three figures disappear, Rumsey turned and gave Kreese a sly smile, then couldn't help but scoff. What are you doing? What did you do to Belle? It's nothing, Lord Rumsey, please don't worry about these details. Kirsty covered her mouth with a grin. Wait a minute, something feels off. Rumsey frowned. Your relationship with that kid isn't normal. You haven't actually fallen for a little brat who hasn't even grown up yet, have you? What did Lord Rumsey say? Kirsten asked, her face hardening as she glared at him with a cute but fierce expression. Then tell me, what's the meaning of injecting him with angelic power? Rumsey snorted. Don't think I can't see through it. Although I really hope this kid can become the supreme Kai of this universe, but why didn't you tell me beforehand that you were cheating? I could have helped cover for you. Kiers was speechless for a moment. I thought you would say some high-sounding and righteous words. What you said left everyone speechless. Kex, you're a true friend. Rumsey gave Kex a thumbs up. Kreese really didn't know what to say. But then again, was the reason this kid was so fierce before because you infused him with angelic power? Rumsey wiggled his trunk, somewhat puzzled. That doesn't seem to fit the divine power that kid displayed. It didn't appear to have much to do with your angelic power. Oh dear, my angelic power only prevents Belserkatten from doing anything, that's all, Crystal said, revealing the truth. Clatter. What does that mean? Rumsey was taken aback, his mind not quite processing it. The main issue is that Rumsey didn't even consider the possibility of creating clones. It means exactly what it says. Kiers didn't explain further. Forget it, I'm not interested in any of that. Rumsey waved his hand. As long as he can become a Supreme Kai, the process doesn't matter at all. I think it would be better for Lord Rumsey to learn more. It will definitely come in handy in the future, Keith advised. Rumsey gave Kreese a deep look, unable to understand what she meant by those words. However, for Rumsey, Bersai was on his side. Hurry up and make this kid a Supreme Kai so he can work for me. They build planets on one hand and destroy them on the other. Now I can lie down comfortably. Rumsey gets excited just thinking about it. If that's the case, I've struck gold. That idiot Beerus hired a cosmic emperor to work for him. I'll just find a Supreme Kai to work for me. I feel like I'm about to go numb from winning so much. Wahahaha. Thinking this, snot bubbles popped out of Rumsey's long nose and his mouth stretched to the back of his head. Kirsten quickly took a few steps back, startled by Rumsey's snot bubble, and couldn't help but exclaim, "Oh dear, Mr. Rumsey, that's quite a unique way you blow up a balloon." Rumsey glanced at it, then popped the snot bubble with a finger, revealing two sharp tusks that gleamed brightly at that moment. Universe 10, Barbary. Under Jevaz's leadership, Belsay has already appeared in the skies above this planet. Beryl looked down and saw a vast, dense forest. And in the forest stand towering cliffs. The humans on this planet live on cliffs and appear to be a species evolved from birds. It must be said that the air on this planet looks pretty good. Unfortunately, he couldn't feel the true form of Belsarna too deeply. At this moment, a Barbary was dragging a large fish along a winding mountain road. Suddenly, two people appeared in front of them, each holding a wooden stake blocking their way. Coo, heh. The two men blocking the road let out strange laughs, their eyes fixed on the large fish on the ground, their expressions filled with greed, their meaning all too clear. The man clutching the large fish grinned, his heart filled with resentment. Why should I give you my prey? With a roar, he charged at one of the men, baring his sharp teeth as if to bite him to death. The man swung the wooden stake in his hand and hit him on the head. Bang! With a muffled thud, the man was sent flying, crashing headfirst into the cliff face, his head spinning. The guy who was hitting him wasn't satisfied yet, so he went up and kicked him repeatedly in the head. Thud. Just then, a stone suddenly fell from above and hit him directly on the head. The two were startled and looked up at the sky. However, just as the two looked up, they saw a huge rock falling from the sky. Before the two could even react, they were crushed under the boulder and were beyond dead. Then another person appeared on the mountain, grinning excitedly. Immediately afterwards, the person descended from the sky, landed next to the big fish, grabbed it and began to devour it. How barbaric. Zamasu seemed to recall the scene of being beaten by Belsi just now and couldn't help but grit his teeth, his eyes filled with anger. The Barbary aliens might be like this now, but they won't be in 100 or 1,000 years, Guaz said thoughtfully, pointing to the time-space ring on his hand. Now we'll use the time-space ring for time travel. This time you all better hold on tight to me, don't get lost. Is this the time-space ring? Zamasu couldn't help but ask. Yes, but I rarely use it, Jivas nodded. The last time I used it was about 400 years ago. Can this thing really travel freely through time and space? Zamasu asked again. That's right, but you can only move to the future and then return to the original timeline from the future, Jevas explained. Can't go back to the past? Zamasu said, glancing at Belizy with a hint of smugness. Humans are just humans after all, they can't even keep up a conversation, can they? This is a dialogue between gods. You, as a human being, have no right to participate. Bercy ignored him. I'll remember that defiant look you gave me. I'll teach you a lesson later. The time-space ring cannot travel back in time and it is strictly forbidden. Changing history will cause a crisis and have a huge impact on the entire timeline, Jeva said solemnly. I understand, thank you for your explanation, Supreme Kai. Zamasu nodded. Belsi, what about you, did you understand? Jivas asked Belsi gently. Understood. Beryl nodded. Then let's embark on time travel right now. Guaz stretched out his arms. Berset and Zamas immediately grabbed Guaz's arms tightly. 1,000 years from now, Guaz muttered to himself. Whoosh! The next moment, a spiraling flame suddenly appeared on Jevas's body, quickly covering the three of them, including Belsi. Belsail's true form felt waves of dizziness. How does it feel? It feels like motion sickness in a 3D game, however this feeling quickly disappeared completely. When Belsi opened her eyes again, she found herself back in the skies above Barbary. The planet is still the same planet. The sky was still purple and the planet was still covered with dense forests and towering cliffs. However, there were now rows of stone houses on the cliff with a unique structure that resembled small bunkers. Belsi was right after all, they've begun to form something resembling a civilization, Jivas said excitedly. You can let go of me now, we've successfully arrived 1,000 years in the future. Berset and Zamas let go, let's take a look ahead. Jivas descended from the sky, landing on the ground first and picked up a stone to examine it carefully. Berset turned his head and looked at Zamasu with a smile. Zamas was startled and quickly distanced himself from Berset, not daring to get too close. Bercy landed leisurely beside Jivas. At the same time, Belser's true form slightly sensed his special divine power body. As expected of Zerath, even though the clones have traveled through time and space, the original body can still sense them so clearly. There was absolutely no lag or stuttering. Amazing. You two come and take a look. There are some kind of writing carved on the stone. What is this strange stone? Guaz said with a smile. It feels like a musical instrument, Beryl said with a smile after looking at it from afar. Yes, that's right, it looks a lot like a musical instrument. Jivas nodded, then asked Zamas without turning around. Zamas, what do you think it looks like? However, Zamaze remained silent. Guaz was slightly taken aback. He turned around and found that Zamas was not beside him but was standing on the edge of a cliff, lost in thought. Zamas, I'm talking to you, Guaz said, somewhat annoyed. Ah, Supreme Kai, look over here. Zamasu snapped out of his daze and quickly said to Guaz, What's wrong? Jevas was taken aback, took a step forward and scanned the area below the cliff. Beryl followed and looked down. Below, on a spacious hillside, two groups of people were engaged in a fierce battle. The battle between the two sides was extremely bloody and many people had already died or been injured. The air was filled with the smell of blood from time to time. Guaz was also taken aback by this situation and was momentarily stunned. What's going on? Jivas frowned. That's reality? Zamasu grinned triumphantly like a victorious rooster. I told you, no matter how long you protect them, their nature won't change. In fact, it will only worsen. Jivas remained silent. Supreme Kai, take a good look at them, look at their ugly faces. Zamasu's eyes were filled with disgust. This universe truly has no need for humans like them. Lord Supreme Kai, look over there. Belial pointed in another direction. Jivas looked in the direction Berset pointed. A cloaked figure appeared in that direction, leaning on a cane, flanked by two attendants dressed in blue. As soon as the cloaked figure appeared, those fighting nearby were slightly startled and immediately stopped fighting, kneeling and bowing in respect. Indeed, they have developed their own civilization and their own beliefs, Guaz nodded, offering a smiling assessment. That person's appearance brought an end to the battle between the two sides, Belsay said with a smile. Zamas, what do you think? Guaz looked at Zamas again. Zamasu glanced in that direction, clenched his fists tightly, his eyes filled with resentment, and said in a deep voice, "They're still killing each other, that won't change." Guaz shook his head and stated his opinion. Belsay is right, protect them and they will eventually develop their own civilization. Look at Zamas, although they are at war, they are also progressing towards peace. If we had destroyed them 1,000 years ago, as you suggested, this civilization would never have emerged. The progress of human civilization will also increase the overall index of the entire universe. However, just as Guaz finished speaking, a tall figure suddenly appeared behind them. They are bird people from this planet. This man had clearly spotted Bertha and his group and raised the wooden stake high in his hand before bringing it down on them. Belsbel did not move. Zamasu, however, showed a look of disgust and turned around to strike backward with his palm. Bang! With a loud bang, the birdman let out a scream and was sent flying backward. The next moment the birdman crashed into a stone house, raising a cloud of dust. Zamas, Belsay, let's get out of here, Guaz urged. However, that birdman was clearly the type who could take a beating. Despite being hit hard by Zamasu, he didn't die. Instead, he got up from the ground unwillingly, his eyes filled with endless killing intent, and he let out a series of strange cries. Beryl seemed to understand the birdman's language and felt that the insults were quite offensive. Immediately afterwards, Belsay stepped forward and grabbed Jivas's arm. Zamas remained unmoved. Zamas, did you hear that? We're going back. Guaz frowned. Zamasu still didn't move. Gurgle, the birdman got up from the ground and bared his teeth at Zamas. Zamaz's eyes showed even greater disgust. Smack. A purple hand blade appeared in Zamasu's hand, flashing with killing intent. Hey, Zamas, what are you doing? Guaz paused for a moment, then shouted. Ooh, ooh, ooh. The birdman let out a series of roars and charged toward Zamasu's location. Zamaz raised his hand high as if to chop. Birdman is also getting closer and closer to Zamasu. However, just as Zamasu was about to slash at the birdman, bang! Berlusconi delivered a spectacular side kick, striking Zamaz squarely in the body. Ow! Zamasu let out a scream as he was sent flying, his body passing straight through a stone house before crashing into the ruins. The birdman was visibly startled, momentarily stunned, and immediately slammed on the brakes, coming to a quick stop. Fighting is wrong, and besides, you can't possibly be a match for us. Belsay slowly stepped forward and helped the birdman wipe the blood from his face. The birdman looked up, his eyes flashing with a fierce light, seemingly unable to understand Belsar's language. Go home and find your mother, Belsay said gently and then lightly stroked the birdman's head. Seemingly sensing the gentleness in Bel's tone and his unparalleled strength, the ferocity in the birdman's eyes gradually faded. Immediately after a brief hesitation, the birdman knelt and bowed to Belsay. Seeing such a fierce barbarian so easily swayed by Berserker's few words, Guastan's eyes widened in surprise. This little guy is something else. With proper training, he can definitely become an outstanding Supreme Kai. Wait a minute, something's not right. You just said fighting is wrong, so why did you kick Zamasu flying? Isn't this a contradiction? Go! Belsay gently patted the birdman's head again. The birdman kowtowed repeatedly and then turned and fled the scene in a panic. Let's go back, Supreme Kai, Belial suggested. Very good, Belsay. Guas's eyes were full of approval. As a qualified Supreme Kai, reforming violent humans is an essential lesson. You did what I wanted to do. It's nothing, Beryl said with a modest smile. Then Berset walked unhurriedly toward Zamas. Zamasu coughed up a mouthful of blood, struggled to his feet and looked at Bersai, who was walking towards him with some fear, his body trembling violently. Are you all right, Zamasu? Berserker extended his hand to Zamasu in a friendly manner. I'm so sorry you were standing in such a good spot that I couldn't help but kick you. I apologize again, please don't stand next to me next time. Zamazu's face darkened. He didn't reach for Belsay's hand but gritted his teeth and got up from the ground. Look, I've already stretched out my hand, are you not giving me face? Belsay narrowed his eyes slightly. Zamaz was startled and quickly stepped forward to take Belsay's hand. Smack. Berset, however, gave Zamaz a high five. Zamasu was stunned, his expression froze and his entire body seemed to turn to stone. Haha, Zamaz, Bersai's just joking with you, don't take it to heart, Guaz laughed from the side. Zamaz felt like a million grass mud horses were galloping through his mind. You call this a joke? Didn't you see how badly he kicked me? Let's go back, Guaz said, opening his arms to Bersai and Zamaz. Zamaz quickly put a lot of distance between himself and Bersai, afraid that he would kick them again. Berset glanced at Zamaz, then stepped forward and grabbed Guaz's arm. Haha, Bersai, if I stand here you're not going to kick me, are you? Guaz joked. That's hard to say. Beryl chuckled. Ha ha ha, you're so funny, Bersai. Guaz laughed heartily. Zamaz's expression grew increasingly grim, but he dared not utter a word. The main problem is that this kid hits people too hard. How can there be such terrifying and shameless humans? All right, let's return to our own time and space right away. Guaz, along with Belsay and Zamaz, took to the air and hovered high in the purple sky. The Birdman, who had just run out, suddenly had his pupils shrink and his eyes widen in shock when he saw Bells and the other two hovering in the air. Immediately afterward, the Birdman stopped running and knelt down to kowtow to the three people. Whoosh! Jivas's body shimmered with light, which quickly took effect on Bersai and Zamaz. In an instant, Guaz brought Belsay and Zamaz back to the main timeline 1,000 years ago. Kai, Gawaz used instant transmission again, taking Bells and Zamasu back to the Supreme Kai's world. You're back. Rumsey smiled and looked over, then glanced at Zamaz, whose face was bruised and swollen and couldn't help but pause in surprise. How did this guy get injured again? Zamasu's face darkened. Announce the results already, Rumsey was getting impatient. Zamaz, do you have anything else to say? Guaz's gaze swept over Zamaz. I still disagree, those humans are utterly worthless. Not only that, they also destroy the planet's environment. Zamasu gritted his teeth, took a few steps back, and argued forcefully. Things without value don't exist, Jivas sighed, earnestly advising. Earthworms fertilize the soil or serve as food for other creatures. Everything in nature has its purpose. The main reason Jevas advised him in this way was because Zamasu was a Kai king who was in charge of managing the Northern Universe. Even if you can't become a Supreme Kai, managing the Northern Universe well would be fine too. But earthworms don't try to become humans. Zamasu said through gritted teeth. I was just giving an example. Guaz wiped his sweat. Zamaz, why do you hate humans so much? Humans who gain intelligence will almost certainly destroy the environment and our precious planet, Zamaz said in a low, indignant voice. But the planet is not our private property, Guaz advised again. So, is the Supreme Kai going to just leave those Barbary aliens alone? Zamasu pressed. Wasn't what Belsay just did obvious enough? Under his guidance, the Barbary aliens will definitely become better and better, Guaz sighed. So, silently protect them and provide them with good guidance. If they are truly beyond redemption, the god of destruction will naturally destroy them. At this point, Guaz glanced in Rumsey's direction. All right, enough with the high-sounding principles. Rumsey rolled his eyes expressionlessly, not replying, but instead said to Jevas, you tell them about the duties of a Supreme Kai. Yes, Lord Rumsey. Guaz nodded and explained, the Supreme Kai's job is to maintain cosmic peace and devise ways to bring back to normal those planets that want to break away from this peace and seriously disrupt the balance. That's right, exactly. Kos nodded, then added, the Supreme Kai is also known as the Creator God. Besides what Lord Juas mentioned, he also has the tasks of creating planets and creating humanity. Yes, Jivas replied sheepishly. Bersay remained silent. Sometimes, all you need to do is listen attentively. There's no need to offer too much opinion. But Supreme Kai, don't you think this is too docile? We should be more proactive and use our power to subdue those evil humans. Zamasu argued again. There are more people who won't listen to anything we say than planets in the universe, I think. Bersy was truly speechless. Zamasu is a really paranoid guy. It seems he'll keep going on and on if I don't teach him a lesson. However, just as Beleriand was about to make his move, someone else was faster. In a flash, Rumsey appeared directly opposite Zamasu. Smack. Rumsey stretched out his hand, grabbed Zamaz's face and slammed it to the ground. Boom! Instantly, Zamasu's head made intimate contact with the ground of the Supreme Kai's world, producing a loud boom. A large crater was added to the ground. When they looked again, Zamasu's head was deeply embedded in the pit, emitting painful screams like a pig being slaughtered. Bersy was deeply moved. As expected of a god of destruction, I'm far inferior. I wonder when I'll be able to defeat the god of destruction. King Kaiser North, I've put up with you for far too long, Rumsey roared. Are you ever going to shut up? Zamasu screamed repeatedly. You really think the god of destruction has a good temper? Rumsey sneered, raising his large hand and lifting Zamasu's head high. Then something surprising happened to Bersy. Rumsey then used his trunk to slap Zamaz several times across the face. Furthermore, Bersy discovered that when Rumsey slapped Zamaz's face, snot sprayed into his mouth. I dare not look. That's terrifying. What were you thinking just now? Rumsey asked coldly. I won't dare again. I'll never dare again. Zamasu cried, his face as white as a sheet. Don't say that, I still prefer your rebellious side. Rumsey sneered, slapping Zamaz to the ground. The next moment, Rumsey unzipped his pants. Kiers seemed to have anticipated Rumsey's move and turned around naturally. What surprised Beryl happened again. Rumsey then urinated on Zamaz's face and even shook it forcefully. Zamasu felt like dying. Guaz, standing nearby, secretly wiped his sweat, both amused and exasperated, and leaned closer to Beryl. Beryl, never be like Zamasu, never mess with the god of destruction. Bersy nodded solemnly. Remember this well. Although we Supreme Kais and gods of destruction hold the same divine position, the gods of destruction are tens of thousands, even hundreds of millions of times stronger than us. Gowasu advised again, fearing that Bersy might do something rash and provoke Rumsey later. Although you were brought here by Lady Kosai and Lady Rumsey, once you become a Supreme Kai, try to minimize your contact with them. It's all right, if he dares to provoke me, I'll just self-destruct if I can't beat him. Even if I die, I'll blow a piece of his flesh off. Beryl couldn't help but say, Jivas. Jivas was speechless for a moment. Your art style is a bit off. There was a moment of silence. Bersy, please don't do anything reckless. Jivas wiped his sweat. If you self-destruct, Lord Rumsey will disappear with you. Oh, you mean the Supreme Kai and the God of Destruction share the same life, right? Bersy nodded thoughtfully. Thank you for your guidance, Jivas. Guaz immediately covered his mouth, unsure how to respond. I accidentally blurted it out. Bang! Rumsey wasn't satisfied yet, so he urinated on Zamaz, then finding his own urine a bit too smelly, he kicked him thousands of meters away. Zamasu tumbled hundreds of times in the air before landing, sprawling on his back and passing out. All right, we can announce the results now, Rumsey said, wiping his hands on Jivas's body. Jivas, Lord Rumsey, did you P***S on your own hands? Jivas was speechless. Don't worry about the details, hurry up, Rumsey grumbled, urging again. Okay, actually the result is already obvious. Bersy is more suitable to be the trainee Supreme Kai. Jivas coughed, straightened his chest, and said seriously. Then let's begin, Rumsey suggested, the initiation ceremony. Shall we begin now? Jivas was taken aback. Otherwise, why would I wait here for so long? Rumsey snapped irritably. Yes, otherwise it would be more interesting for Lord Rumsey to go find his favorite female elephant than to stay here. Kirsty covered her mouth, laughing heartily. Kiers, don't make such silly jokes at such a crucial time. Rumsey's trunk twitched with anger. Oh dear, how rude of me, Kirsty apologized with a grin. Is this your apology? Rumsey kept grumbling. Well. I'd better start the ascension ceremony as soon as possible. Jevas kept wiping his sweat and immediately turned to Bell Racer with a serious expression. Bell Racer, stand there. Beryl nodded, his expression seemingly calm, but inwardly he was extremely excited. I'm finally going to become a true god. Although he was just an intern king of gods, However, the trainee Supreme Kai also possesses abilities that are not much different from those of a Supreme Kai. Moreover, it possesses a unique ability that the true Supreme Kai does not have. That's healing magic. This setting was mentioned by the Supreme Kai of Universe 7 in the Zamasu storyline of Dragon Ball Super. At that time, Shin, the Supreme Kai of Universe 7, saw Goku and Vegeta being helplessly defeated by the fused Zamasu and made a comment. Shin said he never regretted becoming a true Supreme Kai, but at this moment he wished he were a Supreme Kai's disciple or an apprentice Supreme Kai. That way we can treat Goku and Vegeta. Just then, Trunks chimed in, saying that he was the Supreme Kai's disciple. Trunks then treated Goku and helped him restore his energy to its peak. Therefore, this means that the trainee Supreme Kai possesses healing abilities. The true Supreme Kai, however, lost this ability. That's amazing. Being able to treat it is incredible. This divine body, essentially an avatar, possesses the ability to be immortal and indestructible. If the main body gets injured in the future, it would be wonderful to treat it. Alright, I'm starting now, Bursai. Jivas stood 3 meters away from Bursai, stretched out his hand and muttered incantations. Smack! An invisible mass of energy quickly enveloped Belsie's body. Immediately afterwards, like the old Kaioshin of Universe 7, Juasu walked around Belsi in circles. I can't stand this kind of deification ceremony, Rumsey snorted. Yes, but it's a necessary ritual, Kirsty smiled. About how long will it take? Rumsey asked Guaz. The conferment ceremony will last 1 hour, Jivas said, spinning around. Please, Lord Rumsey, do not disturb us. An hour, what should we do with this hour? Rumsey asked, shaking his elephant trunk and turning to Kirsten. I'm thinking, Crystal pondered thoughtfully, how about we go find a female elephant? Kiers, don't joke like that, Rumsey shouted angrily. How about we take out the food we packed earlier and eat it? There's still some left, isn't there? Kiers' eyes lit up and she blinked her bright, lively eyes rapidly. That's a good idea. Rumsey nodded in satisfaction. Curse waved her scepter and immediately conjured up the dishes that hadn't been finished. Rumsey picked up a bone and savored it like a dog. Kirsty, meanwhile, used her delicate hands to hold a piece of the now-cold Orleans chicken wing, munching on it while stomping her feet in delight. Jivas. Guaz glanced in their direction and immediately felt a chill run down his spine. Why does your food smell so delicious? Could you leave some for me? Beryl looked in that direction, feeling utterly speechless. You haven't finished eating yet, but thinking about it, it makes sense. It seems like only a little over 4 hours have passed since we left planet Vegeta. But for Bell, several months had already passed. After all, Belisy had been cultivating in the other dimensional space for more than 3 months. Hurry up and become the king of internships. Ursi was extremely excited. When I become the king of internships, the first skill to learn is teleportation. Having mastered instant transmission, I immediately returned to planet Vegeta in Universe 7 and took Jin and Bardock away from that planet. Of course, if Frieza dares to cause trouble, Zamasu is his best example. However, Frieza couldn't cause trouble since Belsai had mastered teleportation and could take Jin and Bardock away from the planet in an instant, so there was no way she would have direct contact with Frieza. Simply taking them to a safe place will be enough to repay their kindness in raising us. From now on, I will soar freely like a bird in the sky and leap freely like a fish in the vast sea. Beryl suppressed his excitement and patiently watched Guaz circle around him again and again, wishing he could kick him away. I'm getting a little dizzy from all the spinning. But speaking of which, Crystal, we originally wanted this kid to be a cook, but by some twist of fate he became an apprentice Supreme Kai. Rumsey licked the meat off the bone and couldn't help but sigh. That was really unexpected. Kirsty nodded, then put her chicken wing-eating finger in her mouth and sucked on it. Guaz's circling ceremony finally ended and he sat down opposite Bursai. Hearing what Keith and Rumsey said, he looked at them with a puzzled expression and couldn't help but ask, "What do you mean?" Hee, now that things have come to this, I'll tell you the truth. Rumsey grinned slyly. That kid is a cook we hired from Universe 7. Jivas's expression froze, his eyes widened, and he was momentarily stunned. Immediately afterwards, Guaz felt completely unwell. So after all that, I actually chose a chef as my successor. Lord Rumsey and Lord Kess are such a jerk. Hey kid, let me ask you, besides these dishes, what other delicious dishes can you make? Rumsey asked Belsay. Belsay ignored him and simply closed his eyes. Hey kid, I'm talking to you, did you hear me? Rumsey's face darkened. That kid is infuriating. When I helped you fight Zamasu just now, you definitely didn't have this attitude. How can someone change their mind faster than turning the pages of a book? Belsay, you can sit down now, Jivas said to Belsay. Berset didn't say much and sat cross-legged opposite Guaz. Hey kid, say something, don't think I won't beat you up just because you've become an apprentice Supreme Kai. Rumsey snorted, his elephant trunk swaying back and forth, glaring at Bell Raceway. Besides, you're not an apprentice Supreme Kai until the ceremony is over. Beryl thought for a moment, deciding there was no need to argue with an elephant at this point. He simply opened his eyes and replied calmly, I can cook plenty of dishes, I'll make them for you after the ceremony. That's more like it. Rumsey was very satisfied with Beller's attitude. Bercy's face was cold, showing deep contempt for Rumsey. Just you wait, I'm going to dump this food on your head in a minute. Kirsten sighed softly, saying nothing more. An hour passed quickly. The investiture ceremony for the gods has finally come to an end. Congratulations, Bells, you are now an apprentice Supreme Kai. Gua sat cross-legged opposite Bells, smiling gently. Thank you. Belsay sat cross-legged and nodded slightly. When are you going to step down and hand over the reins? Rumsey asked suddenly, gnawing on a bone and sucking out the marrow. Jivas. Bercy was also a little confused by Rumsey's thought process. This guy really criticizes everyone he meets. He's provoking me on one hand, and on the other hand, he's provoking Kavas on the other. As expected, gods of destruction are all unpredictable creatures. Ahem. Once Belial truly matures, I will officially announce my retirement and let him take over the position of Supreme Kai. Jevas wasn't angry, he wiped his sweat and explained. About how long? Rumsey asked, taking another lick of his bone. Lord Rumsey, it seems you've been gnawing on this bone for quite a while now, Kirsty couldn't help but remind him. Mind your own business, I like gnawing on bones, what's it to you? Rumsey snorted, annoyed. Besides, you finished all the rest of the food, leaving only a few bone fragments. What else can I gnaw on if not these? Hee hee. Kirsty covered her mouth and chuckled. It's because Lord Rumsey talked too much while eating. I'm asking you a question. How long will it take for him to truly mature? Rumsey rolled her eyes at Keith and then asked Guas. At least you need to master all the skills and integrate them completely, Jivas sighed helplessly. How eager are you to make me step down? Tell him quickly, what skills does he have? Rumsey urged. First of all, upon becoming an apprentice Supreme Kai, you automatically possess healing abilities, Jevas explained to Bells. Bells, sense it carefully now, a wondrous power has appeared within your body. This wondrous power is the ability to heal. Bells had already sensed that an invisible force had appeared within his clone, so this is the power of healing. Jivas waved to Bersai from a distance. Smack! In an instant, Bellison's clothes were completely transformed, becoming the unique attire of the Supreme Kai. Belsy, you're an apprentice Supreme Kai now, so you need to change your clothes. Jevas smiled as he stood up, looked Belsy over in his attire and nodded in approval. Not bad, not bad, this Supreme Kai outfit suits you very well. Whoosh. However, as soon as Jevas finished speaking, Belser's clothes flickered a few times and then returned to the Saiyan outfit he had worn before. Guaz was visibly taken aback, his expression freezing on his face. After thinking for a moment, flames rose from his body and he immediately transformed his clothes into the attire of the Supreme Kai. Jivas was a little confused. This kid's got some personality, he actually used clothes he transformed himself into. Ahem, you can conjure clothes yourself too. Jevas chuckled awkwardly. It wasn't that Belser deliberately wanted to use the clothes he had conjured up. The main reason is that Belser's current body is a pure divine body formed from the condensation of divine power. The clothes that Jivas gave him were just destroyed by some unseen divine power. Berset didn't explain much. He suddenly stood up and turned to look at Zamas, who was several hundred meters away. I'll try the healing spell, Belsay grinned. Whoosh. After speaking, Beryl vanished from the spot in a flash. Immediately afterwards, Beryl appeared beside Zama's with incredible speed and reached out his hand from a distance, aiming it at Zama's body. Smack! A pale green light appeared in Berserker's hands and evenly covered Zamasu's body. Under the influence of this pale green light, Zamasu's injuries gradually healed. The next moment, Zamasu immediately opened his eyes, his gaze appearing somewhat dazed and confused. I feel a bit like I have no will to live. Zamas, I've healed your injuries, get up and walk around a bit. Beryl smiled at Zamas. Zamas didn't move, he seemed dazed. Zamas, you're disobeying me again, Berset sighed. Bang! Berset didn't hold back and kicked Zamaze in the face. A shoe print immediately appeared on Zamas's face and he fell backward to the ground, spitting blood from his mouth. Berset kicked Zamas several more times until he was knocked unconscious again, then clapped his hands and walked away. This guy brought it on himself. Trying to play dirty tricks on me, you're lucky you weren't killed right away. Furthermore, now that I have become the apprentice Supreme Kai of Universe 10, it is certainly impossible for me to allow you to switch bodies with Goku in the future. In Bell's view, he had already implicitly accepted Sun Wukong as his younger brother. How could Beryl possibly allow Zamas to switch identities with his brother? Although Kakarot went to Earth, he will unfortunately fall off a cliff and hit his head, losing his memory. But he will definitely remember those memories later. In the universe's #1 storyline of Dragon Ball Super, which is the battle against Granora from planet Cyril, Goku finally regained his past memories. He thought of the moment his parents sent him away from planet Vegeta. Then, I think Wukong must also remember me when I was a child. So we need to find a chance to kill Zamasu. It's a bit inappropriate to kill him openly and honestly. He is, after all, a king of the realms, and so far he has not made any mistakes. Once I've made myself at the top in Universe 10, I'll secretly kill you. Bersai returned to Guaz's side. Jivas quietly wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. My feelings are so complicated. I have this feeling that I'm raising a really terrifying Supreme Kai. This kid is really something else. I just healed Zamas, then knocked him unconscious again. What kind of mess has Zamasu made? Very good, you have fully mastered healing magic. Rumsey swayed his elephant trunk with satisfaction, then urged Guaz, go on, what other skills do you have? Besides basic healing spells, there's also... Jivas was about to continue when he was interrupted by Belsi. Lord Supreme Kai, may I interrupt first? Bell Circuit, you said Bersai. Jivas nodded, his tone amiable. Do you know healing magic? Belsay asked. I used to, but I lost it after becoming a Supreme Kai. Goasu shook his head. Healing techniques are a special ability possessed only by Supreme Kai disciples, that is, trainee Supreme Kais. I want to retain this ability after becoming a Supreme Kai. Is that possible? Bells asked. I'm afraid that won't work, Guaz shook his head again. Bells immediately turned to look at Kreese. Do you want to retain your healing abilities? Kirsten asked, looking at Belsi. Bersi nodded vigorously. I'm afraid it can't be preserved. Koss slowly shook her head, explaining, the Supreme Kai's ritual just now mainly involved injecting special divine power into Belial's body. This divine power possesses healing abilities. Once Belial becomes a true Supreme Kai, this special divine power will disappear. Therefore, the healing ability will disappear along with the divine power. Bersi was immediately disappointed. Becoming a true Supreme Kai doesn't seem like such a big deal. At least for me, weighing the pros and cons, I feel that the trainee Supreme Kai is more suitable. After careful consideration, Belser realized that only a true Supreme Kai was qualified to use the crystal ball. There are also the Patara earrings. When the true Supreme Kai fuses, time becomes infinite. This is a bit of a double-edged sword. It's not very useful for Belsai. A 1-hour fusion time would be more suitable. Additionally, the Supreme Kai and the God of Destruction share a life. However, Belsi's body is only a clone. Even if Rumsey were to die accidentally, he would be completely unaffected. So, in the end, not being able to use the crystal ball isn't a big deal. However, without the ability to use healing spells, there is no way to heal one's own body. What's the point of training this clone then? The clones are meant to serve the original body. It is impossible for nature to have its own consciousness outside of the control of the self. Yes, Lady Kuz is right. Jevas nodded, smiling. Belsi, the reason the apprentice Supreme Kai can use healing techniques is mainly to heal me, your teacher. This will play a crucial role in dangerous situations. However, once you become a true Supreme Kai, you can also find a disciple to help you with healing. Bercy remained silent. Looking for a disciple, it's something we can consider, but it's definitely not feasible right now. How simple. Rumsey snorted, his voice muffled. Kex, why don't you just teach him a healing spell? It'll be good for the kid to learn healing. I can have him heal me when I go out to fight. Heh. That's right, that's what I was thinking too. Bell only needs to learn one healing spell. Keith nodded. Bercy's eyes lit up. You should have said so sooner. I thought it was beyond treatment. Are you eager to learn? Beryl asked. Kreese didn't speak but instead held the scepter and used the crystal ball on it to scan Belser's body for a long time. Even the crystal ball on the scepter was pointed at Beryl's trousers. Belse, you won't even spare my clone. Belsey, not bad. After becoming an apprentice Supreme Kai, the lag has completely disappeared, right? Cuss said with a smile. Huh, yeah. Belsey's eyes lit up as she suddenly remembered that the angelic power that Crystal had injected into her had reached its expiration time. As for the angelic power injected during the time travel, it became completely ineffective after the return. After all, more than 2 hours had already passed. However, Bersai's body did not experience any lag. Bells also clearly sensed that the special divine power possessed by the trainee Supreme Kai could perfectly solve the lag problem. What lag? Rumsey was taken aback, a little confused. You guys just mentioned this. Oh dear, it means exactly what it says, Lord Rumsey, Kirsty chuckled. All right, I'm not interested in your little secrets. Let's get to the healing spell, Rumsey urged. From my observation, it would be far too easy for your body, Belsey, to learn healing magic, Keith smiled. If you start from scratch, you could grasp it in no more than 10 days. Can you treat me? Rumsey asked, turning his head and shaking his elephant trunk, his expression somewhat excited. No problem, the healing spell has 6 levels. Level 1 can completely heal Lord Rumsey's critically injured wounds, but only restores 30% of his destruction god power, Keith explained. Level 2 restores 80%, Level 3 fully restores him but can only be used once a day. From Level 4 onwards it can be used 3 times a day, Level 5 5 times a day, and Level 6 can be used unlimited times. Kiers, don't use me as an example. Rumsey's face darkened and he snapped irritably. All right then, I'll repeat myself. The healing spell is divided into one that can completely heal Lord Sidara's critical injuries. Kex repeated what she had just said, only changing the name of the god of destruction to Sidara from Universe 9. Belsey. Cress, can you write novels? Belsey's eyes suddenly lit up. Kirsty blinked her bright eyes, completely bewildered. If you write novels, you'll definitely become the god of water, Belsey said with a smile. They say girls are made of water. Are you praising me indirectly? Kier's face flushed slightly. Bercy remained silent. Kvass, standing to the side, was speechless with emotion. How did you manage to steer the game off track? Kex, stop it. You're clearly made of angelic power, but you insist you're made of water. Rumsey couldn't stand it anymore and earnestly corrected her. Bang! Kiers glared at him and punched Rumsey in the forehead, leaving a large bump on his head. Rumsey clutched his head, grimacing and gasping for breath. Ahem! Does Belsey want to learn healing magic now? Jevas couldn't help but ask. I'm not learning now, I was just saying it for Belizy to hear, Kirsty replied with a grin. Jevas was speechless. What level is the Supreme Kai's healing technique equivalent to? Bells asked. You're only at level 2 right now, Kes replied. You can reach level 3 or even level 6 through training. If I become a Supreme Kai and then learn healing magic, will I have to start leveling up all over again? This was a question that Belizy was particularly concerned about. It would be a real pain to start practicing all over again, so it's probably better that the Supreme Kai doesn't become the Supreme Kai. No need, you can keep your level, Kirsty smiled. Understood. Beryl breathed a slight sigh of relief. By the way, continue, Rumsey glanced at Guaz and instructed him. Where were we? Jevas's train of thought was interrupted. What other skills does the Supreme Kai possess? Tell Belsey quickly, Rumsey urged. Stop dawdling, I hate dawdling the most. Jevas really didn't want to talk anymore. Who's being slow and indecisive? The basic skill of Supreme Kais and their trainee Supreme Kais is instant transmission. Gowaz gathered his thoughts and explained to Bell. Belsi, do you have a notebook? I need to highlight this important point, Rumsey suddenly said. Instant teleportation is a unique skill of the Supreme Kai. You absolutely must learn it. I'll take you out to play later. It'll be so convenient no matter where we go. As he spoke, Rumsey stepped forward and patted Bersai on the shoulder a few times. Bersai ignored him. So you're treating me like your own private car? Where do you want to go? Let me pull you there. Hee hee, kid, grow up quickly. Rumsey grinned, lowering his voice to whisper in Belsie's ear, I know a universe where there's a planet full of beautiful women. When you grow up, I'll take you there. You're going too? Bell's sailor was taken aback. Of course. Rumsey shook his elephant trunk up and down. Could that planet be a huge herd of female elephants? Beryl had a bad feeling. The scene is simply unimaginable. A large group of plump female elephants preened and beckoned to Belsay, repeatedly calling out, Come on, come on! Hey kid, what nonsense are you spouting? I like beautiful women, not guys with thighs thicker than elephants, Rumsey shouted angrily. Bersey nodded thoughtfully, finding it hard to fathom Rumsey's thought process. Jivas wanted to cry, Why did you interrupt again? I think I'll just keep quiet. Let's put all that aside for now. The important thing is this teleportation. Rumsey patted Belsay on the shoulder and said earnestly, All other skills are unimportant. Master this teleportation first. Beryl nodded, offering no objection. Bells was supposed to be the first to master teleportation. Only by mastering instant transmission can one return to planet Vegeta in Universe 7 to save Jin and Bardock. You can't expect an elephant to carry you back, can you? Relying on yourself is worse than relying on anyone else. How long does it typically take to learn teleportation? Bells asked with some anticipation. Instant teleportation is quite complex to learn. Even a highly talented trainee Supreme Kai would need at least 3 months to fully master it, Jevas said thoughtfully. 3 months, Beryl's expression changed, I can't wait that long. 3 months later, planet Vegeta was long gone. Of course, what Belizy didn't know was that planet Vegeta was now nothing but cosmic dust. Belsai naively believed that Frieza would destroy planet Vegeta in a month. The 3 months I mentioned are for complete mastery. During those 3 months, you can continuously hone this skill. As your proficiency gradually increases, the distance you can teleport to will also increase, Jevas replied. Once you've mastered teleportation to its fullest extent, you can teleport to any location within your sight. Understood, Beryl nodded. Besides teleportation, the next most difficult thing to master is the crystal ball, Jevas said, gently raising his right hand. Smack! A crystal ball appeared in Jivas's palm. The crystal ball, about 10 centimeters in diameter, floated above Jivas's palm and slowly rotated. Belsey, look at my crystal ball. What's the difference between it and Lady Crease's crystal ball? Jevas asked with a smile. Yours is big, hers is small, Beryl replied. Jivas, Crease. The two remained silent. That's a really casual answer. Ahem. While our Supreme Kai's crystal ball can observe the universe and humanity, it cannot cross universes. It's limited to observation within our own universe, Gowaz explained patiently. Furthermore, our Supreme Kai's crystal ball cannot observe events occurring in other dimensions. I've heard that angels' crystal balls can, right, Lady Koss? Yes, that's fine. Kirsty nodded slightly. Kex, let's switch. Belsey's eyes burned with desire. Oh dear, this crystal ball is embedded in the scepter and can't be removed, said Kirsten, poking at the crystal ball with her fingers. Belsey knew that Keith was joking, so she didn't continue teasing her. Besides the crystal ball, there are also the Patara earrings, Guaz said, pointing to the Patara earrings he was wearing. Whoosh. The next moment, Jevas made the crystal ball in his hand disappear, and with a flash of light, another pair of earrings appeared in his hand. Alternatively, it can be called an earring. The earrings are entirely orange, a different color from Guaz's portrait earrings. Guaz's portrait earrings are green. This is the Patara earring that the apprentice Supreme Kai possesses. Guaz casually tossed the Patara earring to Belser. Belly immediately took it. The only difference between the Patara earrings of an apprentice Supreme Kai and those of a true Supreme Kai is the symbolism of status. Otherwise, there aren't many differences, Gawaz smiled. Once you become a true Supreme Kai, your earrings will automatically turn green. Stop with the nonsense, tell him what the earrings are for. Rumsey rolled his eyes at Gawaz. The Patara earrings' greatest use is for fusion, Gawaz explained. I want to emphasize this. Once you become a Supreme Kai and fuse with someone using the Patara earrings, you can never separate. However, there's no problem with apprentice Supreme Kais, they'll separate after about an hour. Understood. Belsay nodded and put the Patara earring on her ear. At the moment she put on the earrings, a thought suddenly flashed through her mind. What would happen if my main body and my clone combined using the Patara earrings? It should be noted that this clone of Belser is formed from a divine power entity that was differentiated from his original body. It may seem like a simple divine body, but in reality, it's not so easy to differentiate. In the parlance of some fantasy novels, this clone contains Belser's essence and blood. The explanation in the Dragon Ball world is actually quite simple. Bels divided his soul into small parts and injected them into his clone. The clone was formed by compressing immense divine power. If the clone is absorbed back into the main body's strength will also be greatly enhanced. This is equivalent to 1 + 1 = 2. What if we combine them using Patara earrings? I heard that Patara earrings represent the multiplication rule. 1 × 1 =. Beryl almost got himself into a ditch. That's not how it's calculated. Kex. Belsey planned to ask Kex if her clone could combine with her main body using the Patara earrings. Do you want to merge with me? Kirsty blinked, her eyes crinkling. Belsey. Angels cannot merge, said Kreese, pointing to a Patara earring on Belsey's left ear. Smack! The Patara earring fell directly from Belsey's ear into Kreese's hand, then Kirsten put the Portra earring on her left ear. Wait! Belsey exclaimed anxiously, quickly stopping him. Kreese paused for a moment. If the two of us were to merge, would I pee standing up or squatting down? Belsey asked. Kreese rolled her eyes at Bell. Does your body urinate? You have the nerve to say that. Besides, do you really think I'd merge with you? Smack! Kreese put the Patara earrings on her ears, and then that was it. You see, this stuff is useless against angels, Curse explained with a laugh. Beryl nodded thoughtfully, then let out a long sigh of relief, saying with lingering fear, that startled me. I thought I'd have to squat to pee from now on. Kreese didn't want to talk anymore, so she took off the Patara earring and returned it to Belsey. Bertha took the Patara earring and stared intently at Rumsey. Rumsey immediately looked exasperated and started rolling up his sleeves. Kid, what do you mean? Let me make this clear, don't even think about merging with me, Rumsey shouted angrily. So the Supreme Kai can fuse with the God of Destruction? Belsey understood. Don't even think about it, your fusion with me will only weaken my strength. Rumsey snorted, his elephant trunk twitching incessantly. I'm so handsome I would never merge with an elephant. Belsey gave Rumsey a disdainful look and put the Patara earring back on. What did you say, kid? Are you looking for a beating? Rumsey was getting angry. Lord Supreme Kai, please continue. Belser ignored Rumsey and instead addressed Gwas respectfully. Okay, Jevaz nodded. The last power related to the Supreme Kai is this spacetime ring. As he spoke, Gwas gently raised his right hand and a ring box appeared in his hand. It's exactly the same as the ring box from before. You've seen this time-space ring before. It allows you to travel through time, but it can only be used to observe planets of interest in the future and then return to the present, Jevaz explained, then added solemnly, you cannot go back to the past. Going back to the past is strictly forbidden. Belsey doesn't have much interest in the time-space ring right now, so he remains unmoved. These things will be mine sooner or later anyway. These are basically all the skills the Supreme Kai possesses, Gawaz explained, the ring box in his hand instantly disappearing. He continued, as for other skills such as telekinesis and combat, these are basic abilities and easy to master. As he said this, Jivas raised his right hand high and a black cube immediately appeared in his hand. Look, this is telekinesis. This black cube is thunder steel, the hardest metal in the universe, Gwas said with a smile. A flash of light appeared in his hand again and the thunder steel vanished instantly. Let's learn teleportation first, Belsey replied. Okay, Jivas nodded, offering no objection and raised his hand again. Smack! A book appeared in Guaz's hand which he then handed to Bersai. Bell took the book and saw 7 large characters written on the cover, "The Complete Guide to Supreme Kai's Skills." Bercy was speechless. "Do you want me to learn it myself again?" "Belsi, this book covers all the skills of the Supreme Kai. Study it yourself first, and if you don't understand anything, feel free to ask me." Jevas smiled slightly. Bercy nodded helplessly. "Since you have the book, come back to the God of Destruction realm with me and study it slowly," Rumsey said, waving his elephant trunk. "If you don't understand something, you can ask Kreese." Beryl looked at Kex, then at Jivas, nodded, and walked over to Kex's side. Since XS possesses these skills, training with her would be much more convenient than training with the Supreme Kai. Moreover, compared to the original body, the God of Destruction's realm is closer to the original body, making it sometimes easier to operate. Jivas was speechless with emotion. "How much do you look down on me as your teacher? Supreme Kaya, once this kid has mastered all the skills, you'd better step down and give way, understand?" Rumsey snorted and ordered Guas. "Yes, Lord Rumsey," Guaz nodded helplessly. "You're smart enough to train with Keith." Rumsey gave Belsi a satisfied look, then said to Keith, "Let's go back." "Let's go, Bells." Kirsty held out her hand to Bells. Bells stepped forward and took Kier's soft, blue hand. "Lord Supreme Kai, I apologize for disturbing you." "Farewell." Crystal bowed politely and tapped her scepter lightly on the ground. Smack! A layer of angelic power as dazzling as stars immediately appeared on Keith's body, and the angelic power quickly spread to Belsi's body. Whoosh! Cruz, carrying Belsi, transformed into a dazzling streak of light and swiftly vanished into the starry sky. Rumsey, surrounded by purplish-red flames, immediately gave chase and walked alongside Kreese. "Goodbye!" Guaz waved goodbye to the 3 of them. When the 3 figures had completely disappeared from sight, Jevas suddenly felt something was wrong. "Wait a minute. That kid is my disciple now, and he didn't even say goodbye before leaving. Who am I training a Supreme Kai for? Why do I get the feeling that they're training a partner for that Rumsey guy? That's enough." For a very long time in our universe, the Supreme Kai and the God of Destruction haven't been able to cooperate properly. Perhaps this is an opportunity. I hope that the Supreme Kai I've trained can work well with Lord Rumsey and develop this universe well. There was a moment of silence. Guaz turned his head and saw Zama's lying sprawled out in the distance, and beads of sweat involuntarily rolled down his face. How pathetic Zamasu is! Guaz took a deep breath, stepped forward, and woke Zama's. Zamasu slowly woke up, his eyes lifeless with an expression of utter despair. "Getting peed on in the face by an elephant. That's G disgusting." "Zamasu, although you lost the election for trainee Supreme Kai, you are still a remarkable Supreme Kai," Goasu earnestly advised. "Go back now." Zamaze nodded expressionlessly, then mechanically turned to leave. "Zamas, your obsession is too strong. Go back and reflect on your actions and don't do anything foolish again," Guaz advised again. Zamas glanced back at Guaz but said nothing. "Go ahead," Jivas waved his hand. Zamasu said no more, immediately took to the air and gradually left the Supreme Kai's realm. The 10th universe, outer space. On the way, Belsay couldn't wait to take out the complete guide to Supreme Kai skills that Jevas had given him and flipped through it. The first chapter was about how to learn instant teleportation. "Kid, you're pretty diligent." Rumsey turned to look at Belizy and earnestly instructed, "Remember, learn teleportation first." "Understood." Beryl nodded, and Belsai is indeed watching teleportation. After all, Belsay was even more eager than Rumsey to master teleportation. After studying the instructions on how to use instant transmission for a while, Bells suddenly asked Koss, "Does one have to be an apprentice Supreme Kai to learn instant transmission?" "Yes, you can try it yourself, but you probably won't be able to learn it." Kirsten quickly understood Bell's true intentions and suggested with a smile, "I tried it, practiced for an hour, but it had no effect whatsoever." Belsay shook his head. The reason for this is that Belsay's true form was already attempting to use teleportation within an alternate dimension. The result was predictable, it's completely unusable. Rumsey pricked up his ears, his eyes filled with surprise as he couldn't quite understand the conversation between Kreese and Bells. "What are you talking about, kid? We've only been gone from the Supreme Kai's world for 10 minutes. Rumsey was the kind of person who was oblivious to everything and he just didn't get it. "It's nothing, Lord Rumsey, you don't need to worry about such details," Kreese said with a smile. "HMPH, do you think I want to hear that?" Rumsey snorted, not pressing for details, seemingly uninterested in these matters. "There's no other way." Belsay shook his head and stopped letting his main body train in teleportation. "Since it's unusable, then we won't use it. What Belizy needs to do is to continuously strengthen the main body." About 10 more minutes passed. From afar, Belsay spotted the inverted pyramid planet suspended in a mysterious space. "This is the realm of the gods of destruction, also known as Planet Rumsey." Smack! The three of them slowly descended onto the land of the god of destruction. Just as the three landed, Beryl suddenly saw a bright red chicken on the ground, striding back and forth with its head held high. Cluck cluck! Upon discovering the three, the turkey let out a strange squawking sound like a hen laying an egg. Where did this turkey come from? Belsay couldn't help but ask. Cluck, cluck, cluck. The turkey seemed to understand Belle's voice. It immediately stared with its eyes wide open, its feathers standing on end, and kept making strange noises like a hen laying an egg. Bang. Beryl stepped forward and slammed the turkey's head to the ground. Cluck, cluck. The turkey couldn't make any more noise. "Kex, have you ever had beggar's chicken?" Belsay asked, looking up at Kex. "Kreese, Rumsey." "Oh dear, Belizy, that's a prophetic bird." Keith chuckled. "A prophetic bird?" Belsay was taken aback. "I've heard of prophecy fish, but why have I never heard of prophecy birds?" "Your 7th universe's god of destruction realm has a prophetic fish, while our 10th universe has a prophetic bird," Koss explained simply. "That's right, the one you're pinning to the ground." Belsay slowly released the prophecy bird. After being freed, the prophetic bird immediately flapped its fiery red wings and flew towards a nearby branch. Cluck cluck, how dare a mere trainee Supreme Kai be so insolent in front of me, you just wait, the prophetic bird said fiercely to Belizy. Thud. The next moment, the prophecy bird crashed headfirst into a tree trunk, countless stars appearing above its head, and it nearly fainted. Bercy didn't want to talk anymore. "What kind of beggar's chicken are you talking about?" Rumsey suddenly realized and turned to ask Belsay. "It's just cleaning the chicken's feathers, covering it completely in mud, and roasting it in the ground. It tastes absolutely delicious." Bercy smacked his lips. "Sounds pretty good." Rumsey nodded thoughtfully, his eyes burning as he looked at the prophetic bird lying on the ground. The prophecy bird couldn't help but shudder, immediately opening its bean-like eyes and flapping its wings as it flew towards the tree. "Hey, prophecy bird, aren't you immortal? Offer up a body so this kid can have a taste of beggar's chicken." Rumsey suddenly became interested. Cluck cluck. "Get out, Rumsey, you shameless elephant, your mouth is full of filth. I am a phoenix, not a chicken." The prophetic bird cursed and shouted. "Isn't the phoenix tastier?" Rumsey turned to ask Belsay. "Never eaten it." Beryl shook his head. "Prophecy bird, hurry up and offer up a body. You're not going to die anyway. Let me taste beggar's chicken." Rumsey grinned, his elephant trunk swaying back and forth. "You elephant, how dare you be so disrespectful to this phoenix with your appearance? You must be sucking your trunk all the time, otherwise you wouldn't be spewing dung from your mouth." The prophecy bird cursed. Rumsey didn't bother arguing with him. He slowly raised his hand and aimed it at the prophetic bird on the branch, gathering destructive energy in his hand. The prophecy bird quickly shut its beak but held its head high and paced back and forth on the branches. A brief silence. "Let's talk this out, don't resort to destruction all the time." The prophecy bird chuckled awkwardly and then let out a clucking sound like a hen laying an egg. Beryl didn't know what to say. She's clearly just a hen, but she insists on pretending to be a phoenix. Moreover, swearing is really awful. "Hey, stop rushing to learn teleportation. Get me and Kuzma something to eat first," Rumsey ordered Belsay. "Make us all your best dishes. I'll learn some basic teleportation first, otherwise my cooking won't taste good," Belsay said irritably. "Kid, do you know who you're talking to?" Rumsey started rolling up his sleeves again and moved closer to Belsay, just as Rumsey was less than 3 meters away from Belsay. Whoosh! With a swift movement, Beryl vanished from the spot. In the blink of an eye, Belsay appeared at the edge of the planet Rumsey. Rumsey's eyes widened, his face showing utter astonishment. Kiers was also slightly surprised, her beautiful eyes blinking rapidly. Was that teleportation? Cluck cluck. The prophetic bird squeaked, then scoffed. What's so amazing about that? Isn't that standard for Supreme Kais and their trainee Supreme Kais? Are you two really that surprised? Pa, you don't know anything. Rumsey spat at the prophecy bird. Prophecy bird, Rumsey, be civilized. The prophetic bird roared in fury. That kid just became a trainee Supreme Kai less than an hour ago. Rumsey snorted, cluck cluck. The prophecy bird looked surprised, hopped a few times on the branch, and then accidentally fell down. Thud! The prophetic bird, like an angry bird, crashed to the ground, its head embedded deep in the earth, its legs kicking wildly in the air. Can't you even predict something this simple? Rumsey rolled his eyes in annoyance, his elephant trunk swaying incessantly. Wow, that's amazing, you've mastered teleportation so quickly, Kirsty exclaimed repeatedly, her eyes full of admiration. Not bad, not bad. If things continue like this, I reckon it won't be long before he masters teleportation to its fullest extent, Rumsey said excitedly, swaying his elephant trunk. Yes, Kirsty nodded slightly, her beautiful eyes blinking rapidly. Perhaps his body is more suited to learning teleportation. It seems this kid made the right choice by condensing his body into a pure divine power body. Rumsey nodded silently, then grinned widely. Actually, it's great. This kid has an immortal body. I'll never have to worry about him disappearing while eating or sleeping again. Lord Rumsey, don't be too happy yet. Beryl isn't the real Supreme Kai yet, Koss added. It's okay, it's only a matter of time. Rumsey said nonchalantly, they've already become trainee Supreme Kais, it's only a matter of time before they become true Supreme Kais. Let's wait a while longer. If he's not the real Supreme Kai, then who could it be? In that case, Lord Rumsey would be better off being a little more polite to him, Keith remarked. HMPH, what do you know, kids should be nurtured from a young age. Give them a beating and then a sweet treat so they'll know how good I am to them. Rumsey didn't take Kreese's words to heart at all. Smack! The bird strained its legs and finally managed to lift its head out of the ground. Immediately afterward, the prophecy bird shook its head vigorously, shaking off the dust, and asked with some surprise, that not-so-popular kid, is he our universe's newly appointed trainee Supreme Kai? That's right. Rumsey nodded. The chef that Kirsty and I found in Universe 7. The prophetic bird peeked out with a question mark on its head. It turns out this kid has a naturally divine physique. Coincidentally, the Supreme Kai is planning to retire and even asked Kreese to help find a suitable successor. Rumsey chuckled, so you took this cook with you. The prophecy bird understood. Besides, this kid's body is formed purely from divine power, so he's immortal and indestructible. He's definitely better than that guy Jeva's, right? Rumsey's smile grew even brighter and his elephant trunk twitched up proudly. The so-called immortality only applies to ordinary gods, right? The prophecy bird shook its head and said, you gods of destruction could easily destroy him completely, wouldn't you? Of course, there's nothing a god of destruction can't destroy, Rumsey said smugly. All right, prophecy bird, hurry up and predict how high this kid's achievements will be after he becomes a true Supreme Kai. The prophetic bird looked towards the distant Belser, and after a few seconds, a hint of fear flashed in its eyes. However, the bird's expression quickly returned to normal. Immediately afterwards, the prophetic bird raised its rooster's head. So, can you predict it? Rumsey asked, wiggling his elephant trunk. I can't predict how high we'll achieve in the future, the prophecy bird hopped a few times on the ground and whispered, but I can predict what will happen in the near future. Then tell me, Rumsey snorted. I foretell that soon, Rumsey, you will be tormented by something called chili peppers, the prophetic bird murmured. Rumsey was taken aback, somewhat confused by the prophetic bird's meaning, and asked curiously, explain yourself clearly, what kind of chili pepper, how to torture it? I don't know exactly how it will be tortured, this is just my prophecy. Be careful, the prophecy bird said, letting out another strange squeak like a hen laying an egg. Chili peppers, I've got it, Rumsey nodded thoughtfully. After careful consideration, Rumsey quickly came to understand what the prophetic bird had said. It must be that kid Bersy making some special food to get back at me. Isn't that simple? This kid and Kreese are such good friends, can't I just eat whatever Kreese has eaten? He's just a 6-year-old kid, I don't believe he can pull any tricks on me. At this point, Belsey had already appeared on the edge of the planet Rumsey. Looking down, I saw a dazzling starry sky. Beerus felt that happiness had come too suddenly. This instantaneous teleportation doesn't seem that difficult. What did Belle think of learning this skill? It's as simple as unlocking a skill in a game. However, once this skill is activated, its level is only equivalent to the beginner level. You need to use it continuously to increase its level. Yes, that's basically the idea. Whoosh! Belsai used teleportation again, instantly moving from the easternmost point to the westernmost point. Immediately afterwards, Beryl used teleportation to teleport to the starry sky, looking down at the god of destruction below. Then, Beryl discovered that this skill had a cooldown period. In other words, after teleporting once, you need to wait a few seconds before you can use teleport again. However, if you reach a higher level, the countdown time will likely be shorter. When you reach the highest level, this skill will no longer require a countdown timer. Bells thought about it seriously. It seemed that when the Supreme Kai of Universe 7 and the Supreme Kai of Universe 10 used instant transmission, they didn't disappear immediately. There seemed to be a slight delay. If I train this teleportation skill to the highest level, there shouldn't be any delay, right? Also, Belsai's instant transmission is completely different from the instant transmission that Goku later learned from the Yardrat aliens. Bell's Saint teleported to wherever he could see. Sun Wukong is able to teleport to wherever he wants by sensing auras. In other words, Sun Wukong cannot go where that person is not. However, Beryl can teleport to any area he can see. However, Sun Wukong's teleportation also has its advantages. If you can sense someone's presence, you can immediately teleport to their side. Beerus slapped his thigh. Isn't this the same principle? As a Supreme Kai, he possesses extraordinary eyesight. As long as you can sense someone's presence and your eyesight is fast enough, you can instantly see that person's location and then teleport there. Although there are a lot of steps involved, as a god, this series of operations combined is definitely faster than Sun Wukong's instantaneous teleportation. Or, in future development, we could see if we could learn a simple version of Sun Wukong's teleportation technique. After using teleportation several times in succession, Belsai's understanding of it deepened considerably. Because it's only a short 1-hour period, the furthest distance Belsai can currently travel is only about 10,000 kilometers. To go even further, continuous improvement is still needed. Whoosh! Belsai used teleportation to return to Kex and Rumsey's side. Not bad, you really are a genius. Rumsey wiggled his elephant trunk and gave Bersai a thumbs up. Rumsey, can you keep up with my teleportation speed? Belsai asked, looking at Rumsey. Boy, you should call me Lord Rumsey. Rumsey glared at him, annoyed. Listen to how that Jevas fellow addresses me. Answer my question, Bersai said seriously. I already saw it. The furthest distance you can move right now is 10,000 kilometers, right? Rumsey scoffed. For a god of destruction, 10,000 kilometers is nothing in the blink of an eye. Whoosh. As he spoke, Rumsey vanished from his spot in an instant and reappeared 10,000 meters in the air. The speed was so fast that even Belsai's eyes could hardly keep up. This is F***G, as expected of a god of destruction. Looks like I'll have to postpone my plan to dump the food in your face. Even my current teleportation speed can't keep up with yours. That's really tragic. Belsai, after all, Lord Rumsey is the most powerful god of destruction in this universe, and you've only practiced instant transmission for an hour. Reaching this level is already quite remarkable, Crystal advised from the side. Trainee Supreme Kai, are you planning to shove a chili pepper in Rumsey's face? The prophecy bird stepped forward and asked in a low voice. Beryl felt a chill run down his spine and turned to look at the prophecy bird with some surprise. Was this turkey really able to predict the future? However, at that time I hadn't decided what kind of food to smear on Rumsey's face. You've already thought of names for the dishes? Cluck cluck, I told you so, didn't I? I'm the prophecy bird. The prophecy bird proudly raised its fiery red head. Oh dear, so this is also why Belsai wants to try and see if teleportation can evade Lord Kairamzi's pursuit, right? Keith said with a smile. Belsai nodded silently, but she held nothing back when it came to Crystal. Hey, trainee Supreme Kai, I've had my eye on that elephant for ages. Shall we get back at him? The prophecy bird let out another strange screech like a hen laying an egg. Beryl was slightly taken aback, a little confused by the prophecy bird's tactics. Then Belser looked thoughtfully at the prophecy bird and couldn't help but ask, "I just pressed your head to the ground. You're not going to take revenge on me like that, are you? That's nothing. Before you came to the realm of the gods of destruction, that elephant bullied me quite a bit." The prophecy bird flapped its wings, looking completely unfazed. Yes, yes, Lord Rumsey certainly bullies the prophecy bird quite a bit when he's not busy. Crystal nodded in agreement, then added with a smile, "But Lord Rumsey is ultimately a god of destruction. He can easily dodge that move. Therefore, we must strike him when he is off guard," the prophetic bird mused. "I'm all ears," Beryl nodded. "In a moment, all you need to do is this, and then this." The prophetic bird revealed its plan, excitedly hopping around on the ground. Belsay, "You're ruthless. How much hatred does this turkey have for Rumsey? Count me in." Kirsty smiled and held out her hand. Bercy fell silent, and suddenly I felt a little sorry for Rumsey, but I like it. Belsy and Kirsty gave each other a high five. The prophecy bird also flapped its wings and took flight, giving Bells and Keith a high five with its wings. "Watch out, he's back," the prophecy bird exclaimed. Whoosh. Rumsey flashed down from 10,000 meters in the air and appeared next to Belsy. "What are you three doing sneaking around here?" Rumsey asked, shaking his elephant trunk and looking at Bell and then at Keith. Nothing, we're just thinking about what to eat later," Kirsty chuckled. "Cluck cluck, Belsy just said he's going to cook some of his signature dishes for us to celebrate becoming an apprentice Supreme Kai." The prophetic bird hopped around and said, "Kid, you finally got your place." Rumsey nodded in satisfaction. "Go on now. Remember, I'm the one who brought you from that planet. Even though you're an apprentice Supreme Kai now, you're still my cook." "Okay," Beryl obediently agreed. Smack! Kreese waved her scepter lightly. Whoosh. In just a moment, a brand new set of kitchen utensils appeared on the scene. "Belsy, you should practice your telekinetic abilities when you have some free time," Kirsten said with a smile. Bercy was speechless. "Even if I wanted to practice telekinesis, I wouldn't want to conjure up a set of kitchen utensils. So after all this, am I still a cook? I'm now an intern world god, which makes me a demigod. Is it a bit much to ask me to bring out kitchenware?" However, Belsay didn't show it. Instead, he tried to conjure some vegetables by telekinesis. However, Belsay had only recently become an apprentice supreme god, and his telekinesis was not yet very skillful, so he couldn't retrieve many dishes. "All right, stop practicing telekinesis. Just tell me what you need and you can cook, Kreese." Rumsey couldn't stand it anymore and urged. "Yes, Lord Rumsey." Kirsty nodded without objection. Belsy told Kirsten what ingredients and seasonings she needed. Kreese waved her scepter incessantly, conjuring up all sorts of ingredients. Rather than conjuring up the ingredients, it's more like using telekinesis to bring ingredients from distant regions to the scene. In less than 5 minutes, many more varieties of vegetables and meats appeared on site. "How many dishes can we make with this?" Rumsey asked. 20, I guess." Beryl looked at the ingredients and nodded. "That's enough." Rumsey felt that 20-odd dishes were sufficient. The main thing is to try the food this kid makes first. If the food is cooked in a different place and doesn't taste right, that's really unpleasant. "Which of these vegetables is a chili pepper?" Rumsey asked Kirsty, looking at the vegetables on the table. "This one," Kirsty said, picking up a small chili pepper and pointing it at Rumsey. "It should be this red thing, but it's called something different here." "Got it." Rumsey nodded, remembering the little thing. "If this stuff is in the food later, I'll have to be careful." "Is this thing called chili pepper edible?" Rumsey asked Belsay again. "Of course you can eat it," Belsay said, picking up a small handful of chili peppers and stuffing them directly into his mouth, enjoying them immensely. Bersai swallowed a handful of small red chilies whole. Since Belsel's current body is an avatar, he naturally doesn't feel much. Besides, even if it were the real Belial, eating 1 or 2 small chili peppers wouldn't be a big deal. In her past life, Belsay loved to eat chili peppers. Sometimes when she didn't feel like cooking, she would eat steamed buns with small red chilies. That tasted absolutely amazing. Rumsey looked at Bellary thoughtfully without saying a word. After hesitating for a moment, Rumsey also grabbed a small handful of chili peppers and ate them in one bite. The next moment, Rumsey's face instantly changed from pink to bright red and then from bright red to crimson. Boom. Flames erupted from Rumsey's body, transforming him into a fiery red streak that shot into the sky in the blink of an eye, piercing straight through a star. Boom. The star pierced by Rumsey shattered into countless pieces, transforming into massive fireballs that hurtled towards the land of the god of destruction, carrying with them waves of heat. "This guy is really reckless," the prophecy bird said, raising its head. "Oh dear." Curse silently wiped away her sweat. Belle's joy was also shocked. "I really underestimated the god of destruction. That's incredibly powerful. With my current abilities, it would be very difficult for me to penetrate a star with my own body." "Prophecy bird, did you foresee something that led you to team up with Belly? Keith asked the prophecy bird in a low voice. "Yes," the prophetic bird nodded. "Can you tell me?" Kirsty asked with a smile. "Belsi will become the most powerful Supreme Kai in history," the prophetic bird whispered, "even surpassing the Grand Priest in strength. Oh my, he's really amazing." Kreese blinked her beautiful eyes, a hint of surprise in her expression, then sighed softly. "The High Priest must be having a headache." "Prophecy bird, a star exploded and suddenly the sky went dark." The prophetic bird looked up at the sky. The sky darkened instantly due to the star's explosion. However, the god of destruction realm has more than one star, so it is not completely dark, it's just not as bright as before. "Yes, the scenery isn't as good as it used to be, let's restore it." Kirsty nodded. "Time cycles?" Kirsty's small mouth opened slightly, she muttered incantations and waved the scepter in her slender hand in the air. An invisible angelic power quickly spread outwards. In an instant, time seemed to flow backward and the roaring fireballs flew back and reformed into a star. The sky returned to its original state. Only Rumsey was still tumbling and rolling high in the air, looking like someone was chanting a spell on him. It took a full 5 minutes to process. Rumsey was finally almost fully recovered and slowly fell from the sky, his face extremely pale. "Kid, you did this on purpose, didn't you?" Rumsey, tears streaming down his face, glared angrily at Bercy. "What are you talking about?" Beryl asked calmly. "You're deliberately trying to tempt me to eat that stuff?" Rumsey sneered, swaying his elephant trunk as he walked step by step toward Bercy. "Are you out of your mind? You asked me which one was a chili pepper and I pointed it out to you. Then you asked me if you could eat this and I ate it to show you." Beryl said calmly, "Just because I can eat it doesn't mean animals can." "What did you say, kid?" "Don't think that just because you've become an apprentice Supreme Kai you can act so arrogantly in front of me." Rumsey was furious and arm in arm was about to go and teach Bells a lesson. Kreese and the prophecy bird immediately stopped Rumsey. "Lord Rumsey, please calm down." "Do you still want to eat the delicious food Belsi made?" Keith asked hurriedly. "Cluck cluck, that's right, that's right." The prophecy bird hopped on the ground and chimed in. "HMPH, fine, I'll let it slide this time." Rumsey snorted, then added a threat. "Kid, you better cook your food better or I'll teach you a lesson." Bersai ignored Rumsey and started cooking. "How about that? My prophecy came true, didn't it?" The prophecy bird hopped around on the ground a couple more times, looking at Rumsey with a smug expression. "That's it?" Rumsey snorted and rolled his eyes at the prophecy bird. "I thought your predictions were something really terrifying. Is this all the food we got? But I must say, that thing called chili pepper, when you first eat it, does really feel like your whole body is exploding. But the more you taste it, the more unique the flavor becomes. You made me make the prophecy." The prophecy bird then let out a strange squawk like a hen laying an egg. "Fine, I won't bully you today," Rumsey snorted. A table full of dishes was quickly cooked by Belsay. Even Belsay was so hungry that a stream of fiery red light dripped from the corners of his mouth. "This is ridiculous. I've been eating flour all day in this alternate dimension. I want some vegetables too. Yes, why don't I bring some food with me? I'll prepare some food and take it to the other dimension to eat later." Cass couldn't wait any longer. Every time Bellizy cooked a dish, Cass would immediately step forward to taste the first bite, and with each bite her eyebrows would start to dance. Rumsey also savored the taste, his excited elephant trunk swaying back and forth. The prophecy bird hopped around enjoying its meal, constantly making strange squeaks like a hen laying an egg. It's fair to say that by the time Belsay finished preparing the 20 dishes, the man, the elephant, and the bird had almost finished eating. There's not much to complain about with Belser since he's just an avatar right now. Even if he eats the food, it will be completely destroyed by pure divine power. I suddenly feel it's a bit of a shame not to make this kid a cook, Rumsey murmured, licking a bone. I feel the same way. Kirsty nodded in deep agreement, feeling that Rumsey was absolutely right. However, considering the prospects of the entire universe, it's still better to let this kid become the Supreme Kai. Rumsey sighed again, sucked on his marrow, and was in a great mood. By this time, Belsay had finished cooking all the dishes. Hey kid, come here. Rumsey pointed to the chair next to him with his elephant trunk. Belsay, you can use your nose like this. Beryl didn't go over, he simply said, just say what you want to say. Kid, you've already heard what that old man Jevas has to say about the Supreme Kai's job, haven't you? Rumsey said to Bell, chewing on bone marrow. Creating planets, creating humanity, and maintaining cosmic peace, it's really just these three things, right? Belsherthel summarized simply. Good, that basically includes these 3 points. Rumsey was satisfied with Belizy's performance and then asked, do you know what the job of the god of destruction is? What does this have to do with me? Belsay said irritably. Rumsey suddenly seemed a little lost. Why isn't this kid playing by the rules? Kid, you better listen up, Rumsey grinned, waving his elephant trunk. The main job of the god of destruction is to destroy useless planets. Do you understand? Got it, you want me to do the god of destruction's job while creating planets? Belizy understood immediately. You're so clever, that's it, Rum cackled. I've done your job, what are you going to do? Beryl asked with a smile. Of course I'm going to lie down for a while, Rumsey snorted. Kid, you need to understand one thing, I'm the one who took you away from that planet called Planet Vegeta. If it weren't for me, that planet would have been destroyed by Frieza sooner or later. You would have died along with it. Tell me, didn't I save you? I admit that. Beryl nodded seriously, picked up a tube of horseradish and squeezed it onto his plate. Rumsey glanced at Beller's movements but didn't say anything more. To express my gratitude, this is a specially made matcha for Lord Rumsey. Beryl handed over the plate with one hand. HMPH, that's more like it. Rumsey was quite satisfied with Belsay's performance, glancing at the green horseradish in the plate. Is this called matcha? The name sounds so nice, it must taste delicious. But what about the fact that you knocked me unconscious and didn't let me say goodbye to my family? Belsay took the plate back. Kid, these are 2 different things, Rumsey exclaimed, rushing forward to grab the plate. Bersy leaped backward, creating some distance between himself and Rumsey. Give me that matcha, Rumsey glared at Bersai. No way. Beryl said, dipping his finger in mustard and tasting it. However, the current Belser is just an avatar, so when this stuff is eaten and the feedback is sent back to the real body, it naturally doesn't taste very good. Delicious, really delicious, Beryl said, glancing in the direction of the prophecy bird. Prophecy bird? The prophecy bird was a little confused. Didn't we agree to use chili peppers? Why did you switch to matcha? Oh, the chili peppers were already used. Give it to me or don't blame me for being rude, Rumsey snorted, glaring at Bersy. Here you go. Bersai casually tossed the plate far away to Rumsey. That's more like it, you're smart enough to know what's good for you. Rumsey grinned smugly and reached for the plate. Just then the prophetic bird suddenly moved. Whoosh! The prophetic bird suddenly flapped its wings. A strong gust of wind suddenly rose up and immediately affected the plate. Suddenly, the flying plate spun 90 degrees and slammed towards Rumsey's face. Rumsey snorted coldly, tilting his head as if to dodge. The scepter in Kreese's hand twitched slightly. Whoosh! The plate moved 10 times faster. Bang! The plate of wasabi was pressed directly against Rumsey's face. Rumsey, I'm going to train. You guys take your time eating. After saying this, Belsay immediately used teleportation and disappeared in a flash. The next moment, Belsay kept using instant transmission to hone this unique skill of the Supreme Kai. Rumsey immediately took the plate off his face and wiped his face with his hand. Then, Rumsey felt a burning pain on his face. Immediately afterwards, Rumsey rubbed his nose on his face, but after wiping it, Rumsey noticed a strange smell coming from his nose. Then, Rumsey dipped his finger in the mustard and tasted it. Smack! In an instant, Rumsey's face turned from pink to green. Whoosh! Rumsey shot into the sky like a cannonball, piercing through a decorative planet in an instant. What did Belsey give Rumsey to eat? Wasn't it matcha? The prophetic bird asked curiously. Oh dear, it doesn't seem like it. Kreese shook her head and suggested to the prophetic bird, why don't you hurry up and find somewhere to hide? Cluck cluck, you're right, I'd better hide quickly. The prophecy bird shook its head, flapped its wings, and flew swiftly into the distance, landing on a patch of fiery red earth and soon disappeared without a trace. Only Kiers didn't dodge. She continued to savor her delicious food with her luscious lips pursed, occasionally glancing at Rumsey's performance in the sky. Instead of watching Rumsey's performance, Belsey increased his speed, using teleportation to fly rapidly towards the planet containing that other dimensional space. Bersai was afraid that Rumsey would catch up. Nowadays, no matter how hard Bellery tries, he can never be a match for Rumsey. Beryl traveled a little further and, realizing that Rumsey had no intention of pursuing them, breathed a sigh of relief and slowed down slightly. We flew for another hour and a half. Beryl finally saw that familiar planet. Whoosh! Belsey teleported and landed on Rumsey's statue, then entered through his nose. Then, Belsey opened the door to the other dimensional space and stepped inside. When Beryl appeared on the pristine white earth, he was accompanied by a child who looked to be only 6 years old. The child has a tail behind him and a youthful face. This is his true form. Beryl looked at his clone and felt quite satisfied. In the following period, Belsey resumed his training. Rumsey wreaked havoc in the God of Destruction realm for a full 10 minutes before gradually calming down. As a destroyer, Rumsey certainly knew who was behind it all. Regarding what just happened, it was absolutely impossible for Beryl to have accomplished it alone. This was also aided by Kreese and the Prophet Bird. Rumsey glared at Kirsty with a dark expression. Oh dear, just kidding, I hope Lord Rumsey won't take it to heart. Kirsty covered her mouth and giggled. Where's that kid Belsey? Rumsey looked around but couldn't find Belsey. He went to cultivate, Kreese replied. Fine, but this won't happen again, Rumsey snorted, not dwelling on it too much. Let this kid train hard so he can become a true Supreme Kai as soon as possible. Heh, I didn't expect Lord Rumsey to suddenly become so insightful, Kreese said with a smile. Hey you turkey, come out here. Rumsey said sternly, his face cold as he looked towards the fiery red land in the distance. The bird of prophecy buries its head in its wings but shows no intention of coming out. 1 minute later, cluck cluck, cluck cluck, cluck cluck. The prophecy bird kept wailing in the realm of destruction, its red feathers flying everywhere. Rumsey stomped on the bird's head, embedding its head deep into the ground. You, a mere turkey, dare to hop around in front of me, Rumsey said angrily. Cluck cluck, I'll never do it again. The prophecy bird hurriedly begged for mercy. That's more like it, you better behave yourself from now on, Rumsey said smugly. 1 day later, Rumsey lay listlessly on a deck chair by the pond, basking in the sun. The prophetic bird beside me hopped back and forth on the ground. Kreese, on the other hand, habitually observes the universe through the crystal ball on her scepter. Hey Keith, did that kid run back to the other dimension to cultivate? Rumsey suddenly asked with his eyes closed. Yes, Bells has already returned to the other dimensional space to cultivate. Keith nodded slightly. He's really something, Rumsey scoffed. This time he actually stayed in there for almost a year. As agreed, Lord Rumsey will be in charge of cleaning up the entire God of Destruction realm for the next year. Crystal looked at Rumsey with a grin. Come on, he's only been out once in the last 3 months. Rumsey opened one eye and rolled it at Kirsty. Belsey hasn't come out. Kirsty shook her head. Don't deny it, Rumsey snorted. You can't just deny it like that, can you? I didn't cheat, Kirsty replied. Lord Rumsey will find out later. Just as Rumsey was about to continue speaking, he suddenly saw a figure flash across the sky. Whoosh! The next moment, Belsey used teleportation and appeared next to Kex in an instant. Compared to a day ago, Bersey looked almost exactly the same, except that he was a tiny bit taller. This is because Beryl deliberately adjusted his height. The main thing is to see what height is more suitable for you in combat. Rumsey immediately looked Belsay up and down, a little surprised, and said in a low voice, "Kid, you're quite something. A year of training inside and your strength has improved considerably. Not bad." Beryl simply said 2 words. "Show me the results of your training," Rumsey instructed Belsay, still reclining in his chair, his eyes half closed. It seems Rumsey has forgotten about the horseradish incident and didn't mention it. "Okay," Beryl nodded, offering no objection. "Which one should we look at first?" "Let's start with the most basic teleportation," Rumsey said thoughtfully. "No problem," Bersey said, placing his hand on the recliner where Rumsey was lying. For some reason, Rumsey suddenly had a bad feeling. "Kai," Beryl muttered something to himself. "Wait a minute," Rumsey said quickly. Whoosh. However, as soon as Rumsey finished speaking, Bersai, along with the recliner and Rumsey on it, vanished without a trace. When Rumsey came to his senses, he found himself in outer space. Rumsey immediately jumped up from the deck chair and looked around. "Where is this?" Rumsey was a little disoriented. "The edge of the universe in the 10th universe," Belsey said with a smile. "Kid, you're amazing. You've mastered teleportation so quickly." Rumsey's eyes lit up and his elephant trunk swayed excitedly back and forth. "Yes, I'd say you've reached the pinnacle of understanding." Belsay nodded. "After all, I've cultivated for a year. Not bad, not bad." Rumsey smiled with satisfaction and patted Belsay on the shoulder. "It's nothing," Beryl said modestly, shaking his head. "Very good, we can go back now," Rumsey instructed. "Okay," Belsay replied, placing his hand on Rumsey's shoulder. "Wait a minute, bring my deck chair back too." Rumsey pointed to the deck chair beside him. "This is my favorite deck chair and the most comfortable one in the universe. Lying on it makes all my fatigue disappear. If you want to know what lying flat truly means, then lying on a deck chair and sunbathing, that's what lying flat really means." After saying that, Rumsey returned to the recliner and gestured for Belsey to take him and the recliner back to the God of Destruction. "Once you become a true Supreme Kai, I'll take you out to play." Rumsey grinned broadly. Kai. Beryl muttered incantations and vanished from the spot in an instant. Rumsey turned his head and looked in the direction where Belsey had disappeared, his smile freezing on his face. "Hey, kid!" Rumsey's face darkened and he immediately flew into a rage. "I've been tricked by this kid." Rumsey looked around again and then made the tragic discovery that he was indeed at the edge of the universe. "It will take at least several hours to fly back to the God of Destruction from here. You just wait, kid." Rumsey was furious and immediately pulled out his communicator to call Kirsty. Universe 10, Realm of Gods of Destruction. Bell's Sakes returned from the edge of the universe in an instant. However, he was the only one who returned. Rumsey was left at the edge of the universe. "Oh dear, didn't Lord Rumsey come back with you?" Keith asked with a grin. "Yes, I left him at the edge of the universe," Beryl replied. "Belsey, you're amazing, cluck cluck." The prophecy bird flapped its wings happily and hopped around on the ground. "I'm afraid it will take Lord Rumsey at least several hours to fly back from the edge of space," Kirsten remarked, then added, "Oh dear, Lord Rumsey has contacted me." "Pretend you didn't hear that," the prophetic bird suggested. "You're right," said Kirsten, casually tossing the scepter aside. Smack! The scepter was planted in the ground and the crystal ball above it twinkled, symbolizing that someone was in contact with this side. "You've spent a year perfecting instant transmission. Bell is truly remarkable." Cuss's eyes were full of admiration. She then asked, "How's your learning of the Supreme Kai's other skills going?" Whoosh! With a slight lift of his right hand, a crystal ball immediately appeared in his palm. Then Belsay levitated the crystal ball in the air, held his hands outstretched towards it, and chanted incantations. Smack! The next moment the image in the crystal ball flashed and Rumsey's figure appeared. Inside the crystal ball, Rumsey was holding a communicator and calling Kirsty. "Kiers, answer the phone." Rumsey shook his elephant trunk, trembling with anger. "Wow, that's amazing, you've even completely mastered the basics of the crystal ball," Kirsten exclaimed in admiration. Just then, Rumsey suddenly looked towards the crystal ball, his eyes flashing with a fierce light. "Kid, have you mastered the power of the crystal ball yet?" Rumsey snapped, his face cold. "Take me back right now or I'll make you pay." Smack! With a wave of his hand, Belsay shut down the crystal ball and returned it to his body. Crease. The prophecy bird hopped happily back and forth on the ground. Even Rumsey has his off days. There's no need to demonstrate the time-space ring, is there? Belsay asked. That's unnecessary. I believe you've already learned how to use it. Crystal nodded slightly. The healing spell isn't needed either. There's no suitable person to heal us right now. The Patara earrings, there's not much to demonstrate. Beryl pointed to the Patara earring she was wearing. Have you ever tried merging with your true self? Kreese blinked, looking at Belsay as she asked. Beryl nodded slightly. Previously in the alternate dimension, Belsay did attempt to merge with his true form using the Patara earrings. As expected, after combining, Belsay's strength increased significantly. Although the strength is not multiplicative, it is still dozens of times stronger than a clone that is simply integrated into the body. These Patara earrings are definitely a great find. However, the main body and the clone can only combine for 1 hour. They will automatically separate after 1 hour. However, if one becomes a true Supreme Kai, it's unclear whether they will be able to separate on their own. Merging with his clone gave Belsay the feeling of having a cheat code activated, as if a very powerful cheat code had been integrated into his body. The prophetic bird didn't respond, seemingly already knowing that Belsay's current body was an avatar. It seems you've mastered the Supreme Kai's skills to their fullest extent. Koss smiled at Bell, then added, you can now inherit the Supreme Kai's throne. Before I inherit the position of Supreme Kai, there is one more very important thing I need to do. Belser's expression turned serious. What's wrong? Kess asked. I'm going to Universe 7, Belsay replied. Are you going back to planet Vegeta? Koss quickly realized what was going on. Bersy nodded vigorously. Kreese, you'd better not go back, Kirsty sighed softly. What do you mean? Belsay frowned, slightly taken aback. All right, since you're going back, it's fine if you go back and take a look. Kreese changed her tune again, and with a gentle lift of her hand, the scepter stuck in the ground in the distance suddenly flew into her grasp. Kirsten waved the scepter lightly. The crystal ball in the scepter immediately projected a three-dimensional image. At the center of this 3D image is a large, seemingly empty sphere. On the outside of this sphere are a series of smaller spheres connected together. The volume of a small sphere is about half that of a large sphere. What appears within the small sphere is like a vast cosmic starry sky. Belsay, what you're seeing now is the entire universe, Keith explained. The central sphere is the realm of nothingness, and surrounding it are the 12 universes from the first universe to the 12th universe. This is our 10th universe, and the 7th universe is currently in this position. As she spoke, Kreese pointed to the locations of the 10th and 7th universes with her scepter. Bell wrote everything down. So if you want to go to Universe 7, you can use the Realm of Nothingness as a transit point and then transfer from the Realm of Nothingness to Universe 7, Crystal explained in detail. Understood, Bersy replied. As for your home planet, Planet Vegeta, go find it yourself. Sometimes searching is a form of training, Koss sighed. As a Supreme Kai, you're perfectly capable of finding the planet you're looking for, aren't you, Prophecy Bird? As she finished speaking, Keith turned and winked at the prophetic bird. Cluck cluck, no problem. The prophetic bird shook its chicken-like head. I understand, I'll set off immediately. Belsay didn't object, and his gaze immediately swept towards the direction of the boundless realm. In an instant, Belsay saw endless nothingness. I'm gone, Beryl said, and with a flicker, he disappeared from the spot. Watching Belser's disappearing figure, Keith sighed softly and murmured, it seems the feud between Belser and Lord Rumsey is bound to escalate into a major battle. I wonder how it will end. There shouldn't be any major problems. I predict they'll become best friends, the prophecy bird said, hopping around a couple of times. If that's true, that's great. Kirsty breathed a slight sigh of relief. The realm of nothingness, whoosh. A figure appeared in the realm of nothingness in an instant. Beryl looked around and found himself surrounded by nothingness, giving him a suffocating feeling. However, Bells didn't have time to express her feelings here. Instead, she looked towards the direction of Universe 7 based on the direction that Crystal pointed out. Kai, Belsay used teleportation again, instantly entering the universe of Universe 7. Upon returning to Universe 7, Bells took a deep breath as if breathing in the air of planet Vegeta. Aunt Jin, Bardock, I'll take you away from planet Vegeta right now. I will take you to a safe place to repay your kindness in raising me. Beryl gently raised his right hand and a crystal ball appeared in his hand. Immediately afterwards, with great excitement, Belsay held his hands out to the crystal ball from a distance, muttering incantations. The only drawback of the crystal ball used by the Supreme Kai is that it can only view the dynamics of its own universe. In other words, Belizy cannot see the situation in Universe 7 from Universe 10. We must first arrive at Universe 7 in order to observe it. Furthermore, to observe a specific person, one needs to become a god and have some understanding of that person's aura. Although Belser had some understanding of Jin's aura, that was before he became a god. However, once Belser finds Jin, he can locate her again using the crystal ball. That would only work if she and Belizy were in the same universe. If it involves traversing the universe, Bell's crystal ball is currently unable to locate her. This is why Belsai needed to find planet Vegeta first. If we find planet Vegeta, how could we not find Jin? Smack! The next moment the image on the crystal ball flashed. Upon closer inspection, Belsay discovered that the image displayed inside the crystal ball was a vast starry sky. Upon seeing the image that appeared in the crystal ball, Beryl was momentarily stunned. What's going on? Is there no way to locate planet Vegeta? That's really strange. Belsay realized he might be too excited, so he took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. Immediately afterwards, Belsay chanted incantations over the crystal ball again. Smack! The image on the crystal ball kept flashing. After the image stopped, the scene that appeared was still a vast starry sky and an endless universe. That's strange, Beryl frowned. The main problem is that Belsay didn't consider the possibility of planet Vegeta being destroyed. After all, according to the actual plot, Frieza would need at least another month to destroy planet Vegeta. Beryl felt that his mastery of the crystal ball might not be perfect enough. In any case, this is Belsai's first time as the Supreme Kai, so he has little experience. If all else fails, how about we go check out planet Vegeta? Anyway, I can teleport. As long as I find the exact location of planet Vegeta, I can arrive there in an instant. Belsai scanned his surroundings, searching for the location of planet Vegeta. After this long search, Belsai's eyes ached from exhaustion, but where could he possibly find the exact location of planet Vegeta? The main problem is the lack of reliable reference points. After all, the universe is just too vast. Let alone a universe, even a single galaxy contains countless planets. Wait a minute, I think I just saw something. Bercy's eyes lit up. Just now, as Belizy was scanning the various planets, he suddenly spotted a familiar face. It looks like Vegeta. Bercy was immediately overjoyed. If I find Vegeta, I'd be happy to return to planet Vegeta in a spaceship. With great excitement, Belsay revisited the planets he had just searched. We searched carefully, planet by planet. Finally, Belsay's eyes lit up as he spotted Vegeta on a pale purple planet. Besides Vegeta, Raditz and Nappa were also present. There was no one else besides them. Bels knew perfectly well that the number of Saiyans who would survive in the future was extremely limited. Therefore, it's perfectly normal that only the three of them are left. No, there's one more person. That person is Qiuyi, that frog-faced alien who was instantly defeated by Vegeta in the future. On a certain planet, Qiuyi looked at Vegeta and the other two with a smile. Are you Vegeta, the Saiyan prince? Qiuyi squinted, scrutinizing Vegeta from head to toe. You're one of Frieza's men, what are you doing here? Vegeta frowned, a hint of displeasure appearing on his youthful face. I am Qiuyi, one of Lord Frieza's elite combatants. Qiuyi revealed a confident smile. HMPH, I'm not interested in your name. Vegeta snorted. Hey, did you kill Akori and the others? Naba demanded. Who is Akor? Qiuyi feigned surprise for a moment, then suddenly realized, I remember now, you mean those three Saiyans who yelled at me. They were very rude to me, so I had to kill them. They were just too weak. Fine, anyway, those three are just a burden, Naba said indifferently. Let me see your fighting strength, Qiuyi said, pressing the button on the detector he was wearing over his eyes. Beep beep. The detector emitted a warning sound. Their combat power is 15,000, 4,000, and 600 respectively. Qiuyi said with a smile, announcing the combat power values of the three people. Combat power. Combat power 17,000. Raditz looked at his detector and exclaimed in surprise, his eyes filled with terror and his body trembled involuntarily. Not bad, you long-haired brat, you accurately stated my combat strength. Kyuya's expression grew increasingly smug. Naba's lips twitched incessantly and his expression changed repeatedly. Vegeta's expression also turned somewhat serious and he clenched his fists tightly. Vegeta, the Saiyan Prince, you don't seem to be anything special, do you? With such little fighting power you dare to call yourself a warrior race? Kyuya sneered, his expression filled with endless disdain. Vegeta gritted his teeth, his eyes filled with resentment. Hey, what are you doing? Akori and the others have been killed? As they were talking, a girl's voice suddenly came from afar. Immediately afterwards, Bo-ryuk-ki flew over and suddenly caught sight of Kyuyi, who had appeared at the scene. Bo-ryuk was slightly stunned for a moment and a solemn expression appeared on his handsome face. Oh, a power level of 300, Kyuyi chuckled, his smile growing even more smug. I didn't expect, Prince Vegeta, that your team has such a weak Saiyan. Enough with the nonsense. Vegeta gritted his teeth, his expression growing increasingly grave. I'm here to convey Lord Frieza's orders, Kyuyi sneered. From today onwards the remaining Saiyans of you must unconditionally obey Lord Frieza's commands. You are not allowed to act without orders, do you understand? HMPH, I don't want to take orders from anyone, Vegeta spat to the side. I knew you'd say that, Kyuyi chuckled dismissively. Looks like you won't know your place until I teach you a lesson, whoosh. As soon as he finished speaking, Kyuyi appeared directly opposite Vegeta in an instant. The speed was so fast that Vegeta didn't even have time to react. Bang! Kyuyi grabbed Vegeta by the back of the head and slammed his knee into his abdomen. Vegeta spat out a mouthful of acidic water and felt completely unwell. The next moment, Vegeta collapsed to the ground, howling in pain. Laddies, Naba and Kuroko were so frightened that they quickly scattered to the sides. Seeing Vegeta knocked to the ground by the opponent in one blow, the three of them turned pale and felt endless despair. This guy is too strong in combat. His Highness the Prince was actually defeated by him. Repeat what you just said, Vegeta. Kyuyi said, kicking Vegeta again. Smack! Vegeta gritted his teeth and raised his hand to catch the kick that Kyuyi was kicking at him. Immediately afterwards, Vegeta delivered a magnificent sweeping leg kick, knocking Kyuyi to the ground. Bang! Vegeta slammed his fist down, landing heavily on Kyuyi's chest. Ow! Kyuyi let out a scream. Vegeta grabbed Chewie's armor and hurled him upwards with tremendous force. Chewie was thrown high into the air by Vegeta. Whoosh! Vegeta transformed into a blinding streak of light, hurtling directly towards Kyuyi high in the sky. Bang! With a loud bang, Vegeta slammed his head into Chia's abdomen. Puff! Kyuyi immediately spat out a mouthful of acidic water, feeling as if his internal organs had been displaced. Damn it! Kyuyi roared in fury, grabbing Vegeta's waist with both hands and flipping him over so his head was facing down. The next moment, Kyuyi propelled Vegeta's body downwards. Just as they were about to reach the ground, Kyuyi immediately let go of his hands. Boom! Vegeta plunged headfirst into the ground below, leaving a hole in the ground. When you look again, only Vegeta's 2 feet are sticking out and he's thrashing about. Are you all right, Vegeta? Kyuyi smiled smugly and patted Vegeta's foot. Immediately afterwards, Kyuyi glanced at the three of them, including Ba, with a smile. You can come and help anytime, but if I kill you, you can only blame your bad luck, Kyuyi said provocatively. Naba, Raditz, and Kuroko were too terrified to offer any help. They were all dumbfounded by Kyuyi's immense strength. Prince Vegeta's power level had reached 15,000, yet he was still no match for that frog. That frog was absolutely terrifying. Smack! Kyuyi grabbed Vegeta's ankle and lifted him off the ground. Vegeta, you're not dead, are you? Kyuyi smiled smugly, then picked up Vegeta and looked him over. Boom! Vegeta gritted his teeth, gathered energy in his hands, and fired an energy blast directly at Kyuyi's face. Feeling the pain on his face, Kyuyi inadvertently separated his grip on Vegeta's ankle, letting out a wail. Vegeta, however, took the opportunity to crawl away into the distance, panting heavily, his face turning pale. You've completely enraged me, I'm going to kill you, you little monkey. Kyuyi roared in fury, feeling an intense sting in his face. HMPH, Vegeta snorted coldly, gritted his teeth, stood up and raised his hand. Smack! A glittering energy blast appeared in Vegeta's hand. After Vegeta condensed this glittering energy blast, his energy level dropped significantly. What? Condensing that thing has reduced your combat power to 6,000. What are you doing? Don't you know that stuff of yours is useless against me? Kyuyi smiled contemptuously, a murderous intent flashing in his eyes. I'll kill you right now, you shouldn't have provoked me. However, just as Kyuyi finished speaking, a voice suddenly came from the detector. Ah, Lord Frieza. Kyuyi's expression froze, his attitude immediately becoming respectful. He nodded repeatedly. Yes, 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 I was just joking with Prince Vegeta. How could I kill him? Ha 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 ha. I'm so sorry, I hope Lord Frieza will forgive me. Hearing Kyuyi's words, Vegeta's expression did not soften, the anger in his eyes remained clearly visible. Hey! Vegeta suddenly hurled the energy ball in his hand high into the air. That's... Naba was taken aback. That's great. Raditz was also extremely excited. Although Boroko didn't speak, her expression became somewhat excited. What kind of nonsense is this? Kyuyi was stunned and a streak of light suddenly flashed across his right hand. The beam of light struck the energy ball Vegeta threw out, piercing through it instantly. Boom! The energy sphere released by Vegeta burst into brilliant colors in the air, turning into countless tiny stars that slowly drifted down. Seeing that the artificial full moon he had released was destroyed before it could complete its transformation, Vegeta's pupils contracted sharply and his face turned extremely pale. I see, that thing just now was an artificial full moon, wasn't it? Kyuyi chuckled. You wanted to transform into a great ape and fight me? Vegeta, your plan has failed. Vegeta clenched his fists tightly and his body trembled violently. What else can you do, you Saiyan Prince Vegeta? Kyuyi said with a sneer. Vegeta felt an overwhelming sense of despair, yet his eyes also held a deep sense of resentment. Whoosh! Just then, a figure flashed across the scene and someone immediately appeared next to Vegeta. Who is it? Kyuyi was taken aback, looking at Belsay, who had appeared on the scene with some surprise. Vegeta also turned his head to look in Belsay's direction, finding the person's face quite unfamiliar. Who is it? Who's here? Naba asked curiously. How did he appear? Raditz scratched his head in confusion. This clone of Bel's looks similar to his original self but appears to be more mature. In addition, the height of the Belsay clone is about 1.5 meters, which is about the same as the tallest person here. Naba. You are... Bo Ryuk's eyes lit up, her beautiful eyes widening with surprise. Who, do you know him, Borokoi? Raditz paused, turning to ask Borokoi, then stroked his chin thoughtfully. I also feel like I've seen him somewhere before, but I can't quite place him. Is it you, Bels? Ignoring Raditz, Poroko was overwhelmed with excitement, her cheeks flushed, suppressing the urge to pounce on him. It's me, Uehara, Belser nodded to Boroko. Bo Ryuki, idiot, my name is Bo Ryuki. Don't call me by the wrong name again, Bo Ryuki stomped her foot angrily. I always remember your name as Uehara. Belsay turned around and smiled. You, Bo Ryuki puffed out her cheeks in anger, however, after a brief hesitation. Whoosh! Boroko quickly ran forward, pounced on Bersai and hugged him tightly. Belsay, what are you doing? Beryl asked. I missed you so much. I thought you were dead. I'm so glad you're alive. Bo Ryuk was overwhelmed with emotion, her eyes reddening. It's all right, Beryl said simply, offering a word of comfort. Actually, Belial had a good impression of this female Saiyan named Poroko. Every time I see his name, it reminds me of a familiar female celebrity. A few days ago, Boroko asked Bersai to go out with her after get off work, but Bersai refused. As a result, Poroko got a little angry and without saying a word to Bell left Planet Vegeta with Vegeta's team. Boroko felt extremely regretful for her impulsive act. Because she thought she would never see Belizy again. However, what made Boroko overjoyed was that she would meet him here. Boroko held Belsay tightly, not wanting to let go for even a moment. Vegeta snorted, glancing indifferently at the two embracing each other. Naba watched coldly without saying a word while glancing at Kyuyi opposite him with some fear. Beryl slowly broke free from Boroko's embrace. Wait a minute, you're Belsay? Are you kidding me? How come you've grown so tall in just a few days? Raditz walked up in surprise, compared his height to Belsie's, and tragically discovered that Belsie was already a head taller than him. "Oh, who do we have here? Another Saiyan has appeared." Qiuyi was taken aback at first, then suddenly realized. However, Qiuyi was immediately puzzled. How did this kid even appear? I felt like he suddenly reappeared on the spot. Wow, that's fast. Without the slightest hesitation, Qiuyi immediately pressed the button on the detector to check Belsie's combat strength. Combat power, 0. Qiuyi was bewildered and completely confused. How can there be a Saiyan with a fighting power of only 0? Are you kidding me? Is the detector malfunctioning? Qiuyi immediately took the detector off his glasses, examined it carefully, and then tapped it with his finger. Click. However, accidentally used too much force and smashed the detector to pieces. Qiuyi was a little annoyed. He turned to look at the detector's Raditz, and his team were wearing and ordered Raditz. "Hey kid, give me your detector." Raditz's face turned pale, his body trembled violently, and he immediately obediently removed the detector, about to step forward and hand it to Qiuyi. This guy can even defeat Prince Vegeta. Killing me would be far too easy for him. However, Raditz couldn't help but glance in Vegeta's direction again, only to find his face ashen. Raditz was caught in a dilemma. Immediately afterward, Raditz's eyes lit up, and a mischievous idea suddenly popped into his head. He immediately shoved the detector into Bell's hand. "Anyway, I'm practically your older brother. Look, you've even lost your detector. This is my little gift to you." Raditz, despite his young age, patted Belsie on the shoulder and asked, "But what's with that strange outfit you're wearing?" "I remember now, Belser, aren't you the royal chef?" Naba slapped his forehead, suddenly remembering Belser's identity. "Is that even a question? Didn't we talk about him before?" Raditz looked up at Naba and nodded. Vegeta was also slightly taken aback, looking at Belsi, who had appeared on the scene with some surprise. What Vegeta can't understand now is how this guy suddenly appeared. The Imperial Chef? Qiuyi was a little confused. Is this person the Imperial Chef? In other words, he's a cook. Who did I think it was? That scared me half to death. Since this guy is a cook, there's nothing to be afraid of. The detector must be malfunctioning. Just now, Lord Frieza said that I should leave only 3 Saiyans, including Vegeta, kill the rest. I'm so lucky. Another Saiyan suddenly appears, ready to die. "Porco, where is your spaceship?" Belser asked, asking a question that concerned him most, intending to find the exact location of planet Vegeta using the spaceship's coordinates. By using the coordinates of the spaceship's trajectory, Bellisi could easily locate planet Vegeta. "Over there," Boroko said, pointing to a distant desert region. However, after speaking, Bo Ryuk was a little puzzled. "How did you come to this planet?" Boroko asked, looking up. "Let's go, I'll take you away from here," Beryl said to Boroko. "Okay," Bo Ryuk nodded obediently. Upon leaving planet Vegeta, Poroko felt as if she and Belsai were separated by life and death. Fortunately, Beryl did not die. Beryl turned and walked away, heading towards the distant desert. As for this guy named Qiuyi, as long as he doesn't provoke Beryl, Beryl doesn't want to lower himself to his level. The main reason is that Belsai wants to return to planet Vegeta as soon as possible and doesn't want to cause any more trouble. Moreover, the real culprit behind the destruction of planet Vegeta was Beerus, the god of destruction. Frieza was simply following orders. Of course, Frieza was also partly settling a personal score. However, after Belsai became an apprentice Supreme Kai from the perspective of a god, he basically understood that even if planet Vegeta wasn't destroyed by Frieza, it would eventually be destroyed by the god of destruction. "Belsi, did you leave the planet before the Big Bang on planet Vegeta?" Poroko hurriedly caught up and asked curiously. Beryl suddenly stopped and looked at Boroko with a surprised expression. What's wrong with you, Bells Sr.?" Boroko was slightly taken aback, and after seeing Bells Sr.'s piercing gaze, she was somewhat confused.